Good morning and Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to everyone. This is the final board meeting of Carson City's Board of Supervisors, the Liquor and Entertainment Board. Today is, we're going to call a meeting to order, and today is Thursday, December 18th, 2014. It's 8:30 a.m. We're in the community center at the Sierra Room at 851 East William Street, and I think this board meeting is being streamed a couple ways. I don't know exactly all of them, but I think it's out there. So if somebody wants to see it on streaming, talk to the city manager. I think he knows where they are. All right. BAC's streaming it. I don't know who else is streaming it. Okay, can we have a roll call, please, Alan?
Supervisor Abel.
Here.
Supervisor Bonkowski.
Here.
Supervisor McKenna.
Here.
Supervisor Shirk.
Here.
Mayor Kroll.
Here.
You have a quorum present, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Alan. Can we call on our good friend Ken Haskins of the First Christian Church to get us started?
Thank you.
Let me just say, I think on behalf of all of us, please pass on our thanks to the entire faith-based community for what the community does for our, Christmas is a wonderful time of year. It's also a difficult time of year for a lot of people.
It is indeed, yeah.
And I know that the faith-based community is concerned about that. They do a wonderful job for our community, so thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, it is that time of year that brings with it so much hustle and bustle and stressful shopping, the parties and packages. We have so many things, the pageants and plays and all of the rest, that too often we can get lost in it and let it overwhelm us. But help us to remember the good news of great joy that was for all the people, that in the city of David a Savior was born. It was Christ the Lord, that we could remember our faith, our families, our friends, our community at this season, and stay focused. Be with our supervisors, be with our mayor today, Lord, and I pray that you would guide their decisions as they work hard to promote the best interests of this community. So be with them, I pray in Jesus' name, amen. To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. We'll now move to item number 5, public comment. This is the time for public comment. We have it at the beginning and the end, and in this community, we have it generally all throughout the meeting. Even though it's a business meeting, we try and accommodate all that. Anybody want to come on up? Linda.
Yes.
Merry Christmas to you.
And you and the board, thank you for this opportunity. My name is Linda Bell Gray. I am here today to take a few minutes and I see some familiar faces from the Cultural Commission. We are trying to get word out about the second annual International Film Weekend for Carson City. Last year, some of you attended at the First United Methodist Church, and this year we've had cooperation amongst 3 city entities: the library, WNC, and this facility here, the Carson City Community Center. Our film festival will be free and open to the public. It will be on February 5th, 6th, and 7th. That's a Thursday, Friday, Saturday. That's the weekend name. We don't feel we're big enough to do a whole week in many venues throughout town. However, there will be 3 international films those evenings here at basically 6:30 to 7 o'clock. We're working on pairing ethnic food right now for the film and discussions pre and post the film. We feel this is going to be a forum to help people to mingle and enjoy celebrating diversity through film. Also on Thursday and Friday at WNC, we've added student-made and independent films. So those afternoons at 3:30 WNC in Marlette Hall, and I apologize, on our flyer today it says Marquette Hall. It's Marlette Hall at WNC, and those films will be probably much shorter, almost like a short, some of them. One particularly fun one is called Baking Alaska by Carrie Barber. She's a journalism instructor at UNR, and this is her film. So we have several interesting films of that sort. We would like to invite everyone in the community, and we will be putting out more information as the weeks go on toward the first week in February. We also realize that's the starting of the legislature. So the town will be hopping. I do have these flyers, and I would be happy for anyone to have them if they wish.
Very good.
So it lists the 3 films. We have a New Zealand film, coming of age story, Maori Boy. We have a film filmed by French and Nepalese in the Himalayas, and the title is Himalaya. It's about a small village and the clash of cultures of modern and ancient. The third one is a Basque film, Spanish-speaking, and also is the winner of the Spanish National Literature Award, the book that it is taken from by Bernardo Achaga, a Basque writer. So those are the 3 international ones. Thank you for your time. I invite everyone.
Thank you. I tell you, I think I went
Yes.
to one last year.
Yes.
It was wonderful. So,
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Mayor Crowell.
all right, you can pass those
Appreciate
out.
the
I'll leave some
time.
back there on the table back there. That's
I
great.
will do so.
Any other public comment? I have one public comment, Sheriff. Maybe I'll step on. I heard yesterday that, we had to cancel National Night Out because everything was so soggy and wet. But I heard yesterday that even though we had to cancel National Night Out, we still took 5th in the nation. And that one of the reasons we took 5th in the nation was the immense planning and that went into it and the organization of it.
As well as the year-long activities that we've been doing. And of course, what we ended up doing with National Night is kind of holding a mini one over at the Boys and Girls Club so that we still hit our target audience, if you will. And a lot of accolades to Lisa Davis. She just did a phenomenal job. We spoke with Roger on the day of the event, and with all of the participants, the fire, the police, the military, extraordinarily big rigs. We just really felt like we were going to destroy the park if we put everything on there. And it was a pretty good option B that Lisa had in line. And so as a result of that, yeah, Carson City is to receive a 5th plus in the nation for communities of this size, even though we weren't able to hold our one event.
Wonderful. Thanks, Kenny, and thanks for letting me step in and have you make that presentation for us. Thank you very much. Okay. All right. We'll now move to item number 6, minutes of September 18th. Everybody had a chance to look at them?
I move to approve the minutes of September 18th, 2014 with one typographical correction as presented to the clerk.
Motion and a second on the motion. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Carried unanimous. Any changes to the agenda?
No changes to the agenda, Mr. Mayor.
Board members, any changes? Unless there's an objection, then we'll take the agenda as published. Well, now, I want the board to leave the dais and come down in front. We're going to do length of service awards and some special things this morning to celebrate a number of things. So come on. As everyone knows, this is the time when we celebrate and acknowledge our dedicated employees in Carson City. These employees make our community a much better place to live. In fact, they usually make it a place so that we can live here. So on behalf of the Board of Supervisors, I'd like to present some longevity awards. The first is to Deborah Ottinger for 5 years of continuous and dedicated service to Carson City. Deborah, you here? Good morning. Merry Christmas to you. Thank you for your 5 years of service.
Thank you for giving me the
Come on up here
opportunity.
now. Come on. I have a certificate for 10 years of service to Carson City. This is for James Jacklett. James, good morning to you. On behalf of a grateful community, please accept our appreciation for what you do for us.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Come on up. Could I have Todd Mitchell come up, please? Good morning, Todd, and Merry Christmas to you. This is for 25 years of service to our community. We want to say a special thank you for all those years you've given to us for making Carson City a better place to live, work, play, and just be comfortable in. So thank you very much, Todd.
Not a problem. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Come on up. And Karen Merchek. Karen? Good morning. Merry Christmas. On behalf of a grateful community, we'd like to acknowledge your 25 years of service to our community. It's a big deal for us to have employees as dedicated as you and the others we're celebrating today. We're a better community because of what you do. So on behalf of a grateful community and the Board of Supervisors, thank you for 25 years of service.
Thank you.
Thank you. Come on up. All right, we're going to get a couple pictures here. Come on.
All right, on 3, 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
I'm too used to, well, that's terrible. You know, we're talking about length of service awards, and we have something in the nature of a length of service award, but it's sort of that way, but it's also something to recognize the outstanding service to this community that a person has been involved in this community for a number of years, many years. So I'd like to read this proclamation, and you'll know who it's about. Whereas Alan Glover has had a long and distinguished career in Nevada politics, winning a seat in the Nevada Assembly in 1972 right after graduating from the University of Nevada with a degree in political science. And I believe, Alan, you were the youngest at that time. You were the youngest to take a seat in the Assembly. Alan served in 7 sessions of the Nevada State Legislature, 5 as a state. Come on up. Come on up.
Where do you want me?
Come on up here with.
Yes.
And so we can see there. Alan, you served 7 sessions in the Nevada State Legislature, 5 as a state assemblyman, and 2 as a state senator. And if you want to know some of the history and some of the fun history of the legislature, invite Alan out for a cup of coffee sometime, and you'll get a real inside look at some of the nuances of what goes on and when we make law. The proclamation goes on. Whereas Alan Glover was elected clerk recorder in 1994, and upon his retirement on January 5th, 2015, will be the longest-serving clerk in Carson City history. And whereas throughout his career, Alan Glover championed legislation on behalf of the Nevada County Fiscal Officers Association, the County Clerks and Elections Association, and the County Recorders Association. And whereas Alan Glover was instrumental in converting the election system from punch cards to electronic voting system, no hanging chads here, no hanging chads. Not only did this conversion simplify the entire elections process for voters, it also reduced the time required to canvass the vote following each election to mere minutes. And Alan, I can't remember a time. Anybody remember a time when we've ever had a problem with Alan and the voting? Never, never. And whereas Alan Glover is responsible for bringing the operations of the Clerk Recorder's Office into the current century by overseeing the digitization of all property, marriage, and elections, court, and public meeting records. And whereas Alan Glover was an integral participant in the 2001 redistricting process, overseen by District Judge Todd Russell, which accomplished apportioning all 4 congressional districts to within 1% of the same population and nesting 2 assembly seats inside each Senate district, thereby increasing the number of competitive legislative districts and solving a huge problem for those who couldn't otherwise come together to agree. A little political aside there, Alan, that's all right. All right. And whereas Alan Glover has exemplified the honor, integrity, and highest ethical standards expected of an elected official throughout his political career, and has demonstrated an enduring commitment to improving and enhancing the quality of county government, not only in Carson City, but throughout the state of Nevada. And whereas Alan will be missed by all those who have had the pleasure of working with him in Carson City as well as throughout the state. Now, therefore, I, Robert L. Kroll, Mayor of Carson City, on behalf of the Board of Supervisors and our entire community, Alan, and on behalf of your staff in particular, all of them, both past and present, do hereby extend this proclamation and our sincerest appreciation to you for your dedicated service to Carson City and wish you well in your retirement. Don't be a stranger. Come on up.
Well, where'd the mayor? Oh, there you are. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the board. It's like everybody else, you're only as good as your staff, and I've had the pleasure to work with some really great people over the years, both on the recorder side and the clerk side. You're going to be leaving in good hands with Sue Merriweather as your new clerk recorder, but we've really had a great staff. They've done a lot of work. I want to thank this board and other boards in particular for the support you've given us in elections. That's terribly important, you know, that we run a good election. Without the support of the Board of Supervisors, we never could have done that. And got a lot of stuff done, and I know Sue will get a lot more things done too, because I'm leaving her with a nice plate full of things to get done. But I deeply appreciate it, and I've really enjoyed this job for the last 35 years, you know. Thank you very much.
Now we have another special presentation. John McKenna, Supervisor McKenna, could I have you come up, please? How do we do this? John, it's hard to express in words everything that you've done for our community. You know, through the building of trails, the Tahoe Rim Trail, always out and around. On the school board, you know, taking care of our education, taking care of our kids, watching the fiscal pocketbook of the school board, and then when you came onto the Board of Supervisors, doing the same thing on the board. You've just done a tremendous job for our community. And there's not a whole lot that we can say that's going to show enough gratitude for what you've done. But we have this presentation to you. It's a picture of Carson City looking over Tahoe, and you'll recognize that some part of that is in Carson City there, part of Tahoe. But this is presented to you for all your years of service, both as a Board of Supervisor and as a school board member, a school board president, and all the other things that you've done for our community. And John, from the bottom of our heart and from our community, thank you for your service.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you. Anybody want to say anything up there? Anybody? Come on up.
John, we're going to miss you. It's hard to say this without crying. That's why the Kleenex is at my station. Thank you for all you do, and I thank you for taking on the helm as treasurer of the BIC, because we know we'll see you around. Take care.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Keep it private. Okay, John, this is a time for you. Come on up and say a few words if you want. You don't have to. I mean, there's nothing I can do to you if you don't. Come on.
Well, first off, to the cameras. Wonderful community. Everybody should be involved. Everybody should work, do their best. We make it a better place. To the mayor, I've enjoyed working with you on the school board and here. To the other supervisors, I've enjoyed working with you. Controversy is what is needed, and we've had that. Cooperation is what is needed, and we've had that. I think we've done some good work over the last 4 years. I know we've done some great work in the future. I really appreciate the city manager coming on board. I think it's a great vote of confidence for the community that a man of his stature would come to this community and try to make it better. So the other thing I need to thank is the staff, especially the public works manager and the transportation manager. Those two gentlemen are stars any place in the country, and I think if we follow their lead, they will solve our problems. And it's been a joy to work with them and to know them. The other thing is I want to thank Carson City for being a nice place to live, a place where you can live and be safe. Thank the sheriff. He's done a great job. I understand he's got 20 more years before he gets to retire. So, the Chamber of Commerce would like me to say, if you are going to shop for Christmas, please do it in Carson City. And I would like to wish everyone a Merry Christmas and a prosperous New Year. Thank you. It's been fun.
Ready? 1, 2, 3. Thank you very much.
Can you get one with Nick in it? Come
Yeah.
on, Nick.
I want to stand next to the Navy or the Marines. You're going to be bringing Jim's the Navy guy here. Get in between there.
All right. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
All right. Now, so I can go on, I have to do this in front of here. We're going to recess for the morning and have cake. Is that all right? That's a short board meeting, right? No, in all seriousness, we're going to recess and say thanks to our employees, say thanks to those who are retiring, say thanks to everyone, and just have some good cheer. And we'll be back we'll come back in about 10, 15, 20 minutes when we think we're about ready to go. And I want to say, I saw you tear there a little bit, Sue Merriweather. I read a little tweet the other night, just last night as a matter of fact, that says, and I noticed you teared out of your right eye. If you tear out of your right eye, it means you're happy. I don't know if you're terribly happy about Alan there. But if you tear out of your left eye, it means pain. I don't know if that's true or not, but you did the right thing. Thanks. Okay. All right. All right. We're in recess. And as we're back in order, we are going to recess and reconvene as the Liquor and Entertainment Board. Alan and Sue, I think it would just have the record reflect that you have all the board supervisors here and the sheriff is here as well. So let's take up item number 11, public comment for liquor and entertainment. Anybody opening public comment? I don't hear any. Minutes of September 18th. Ready, a chance to look at the liquor and entertainment board minutes?
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the minutes of September 18th, 2014 as published.
Second.
Motion and a second on the motion. All in favor, signify by discussion. Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried unanimous. Thank you. All right, let's move to item 13. This is a business license for Morgan Davis, liquor manager at Lake Tahoe Brewing Company. Lena, you're going to take us through this, please.
This item is for possible
Morning.
action to approve Morgan Davis as the liquor manager for Lake Tahoe Brewing Company LLC, doing business as District Brewing Company, liquor license number 15-30216, located at 302 North Carson Street. They are applying for a dining room with a full bar license. Morgan is an employee for the company, and staff is recommending approval.
Okay, so when you open it up?
We will be open mid-January.
Okay, all right. You've got experience, but tell us a little bit about, what the nature of your operation is going to be, how, what's going to happen in that building, and as you talk to us a little bit about it, give us a little puff piece about what you're doing, but also talk to us about how you're going to prohibit sales of alcohol to those who shouldn't have alcohol, including those who are overly imbibed and those who are legally prohibited under 21. Okay.
We'll be operating as a brewery and restaurant, and the building is now only the front part of the building is going to be the restaurant area, so we'll have better control over who's being seen. And I have already been designing a program to train the employees on how to not serve to minors and how to identify fake driver's license. And I will be taking the training for alcohol training in January.
Okay. Sheriff, you okay? Good. Board members? Any comments or questions?
He's just excited about us opening.
Pardon me?
He's just excited about us opening.
I don't know if that's good or bad, man. By the way, where's your red thumb, Sheriff?
Oh, yeah.
I took mine out too. Anyway.
No texting while driving.
No texting while driving. Okay. Who wants to make a motion? Supervisor Abad, go.
I move to approve Morgan Davis as the liquor manager for Lake Tahoe Brewing Company, LLC, DBA District Brewing Company, liquor license number 15-30216, located at 302 North Carson Street.
Motion and second on the motion. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried unanimous. Thank you very much, Morgan. Go do good things.
Thank
Invite
you.
us all down for the opening, please.
We're very excited to be joining Carson City's community.
We're looking forward to having a vibrant business going on here again.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you,
you, guys.
Morgan. All right. Now we're on item 14, closing public comment under Liquor and Entertainment Board. Anybody? Seeing none, unless there's an objection, we will adjourn as the Liquor and Entertainment Board. We'll reconvene as the Board of Supervisors, and we'll take up the Senior Citizen Center. This is the possible action to approve a reclassification of Management Assistant 6 to a Department Business Manager unclassified grade M1. Who's going to do this?
Mr. Mayor, I can lead off with this. I also have Bruce Scott here, the chair of the Senior Center Committee. This position has actually grown quite a bit in terms of the span of control and the responsibilities that fall underneath the current incumbent. The other departments throughout the city have, as a result of the Pond Effect study, transitioned most of these similar positions to a department business manager. Reclassification of this position from a management assistant to a department business manager would also be consistent with similar positions we've done across the city. In September, the senior board actually brought this request to us. We took a good look at it. We took a good look also at the fiscal impact. The board will fund through the remainder of this fiscal year any increase in cost in terms of the reclassification of this position. We will then work it into our budget build process for next fiscal year as we step into that over the next 30 to 45 days. And we will build that into the senior center budget for fiscal year 16. So I've got Bruce here. I don't know, Bruce, if you want to add anything, any details to this position.
And while we're, Bruce, good morning. It says the funding source is the Carson City Senior Centers, Inc. You want to talk about the funding source issue?
Sure.
Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, members of the board, Bruce Scott. I'm the chairman of Carson City Senior Citizen Center, Inc., which is the private nonprofit corporation which is a partner with Carson City in the operation of the center. We are the grantee for the nutrition grants. We operate the food service, the Meals on Wheels, and that sort of thing. We do have 3 positions that are city positions, and they're funded outside the general fund. They're funded by Question 4 monies, which is a tax increment that was passed by the voters in 1986, I believe. So this position is funded through that. There was a question about the additional cost for the current fiscal year. Senior Citizen Center, Inc., our board, has pledged any money that would be a shortfall from the budget perspective in our Question 4 budget to the city to make up any difference, so this upgrade would not be in any way impactive on the city's general fund. We have about 20 people who are employees of Carson City Senior Citizen Center, Inc., including our Meals on Wheels drivers, finance people, receptionists, what else? A number of different activities that we do there. Janice McIntosh, our senior center director, had a doctor's appointment today, and unfortunately she was rear-ended on Tuesday evening on the freeway in Reno. She's okay, but she's not supposed to drive. So Don Beck, who is the person whose position is involved here, lost her father-in-law this weekend, and the family is working through some of those issues. So you got me. But I'm happy to answer questions. We appreciate very much the opportunity for this upgrade to occur, and I would tell you it's very important for the center with our limited funding and not funding as much as our limited staff. We've got a lot of things that we are really happy with. We want to improve on that and grow with it. And Dawn is a very critical part of that operation. She understands the center, and she has stepped in for Janice on numerous occasions as acting. So we strongly support it, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Got a couple up here. John and then Brad.
With the potential changes in the upper management of the senior center, is this still necessary?
Absolutely. I see a real push with changes in the center to really enhance and redouble our efforts to get out into the community to reach more seniors and that type of thing. We're very limited in our administrative capability in the center, and this position will probably be more critical with the changes at the director's level.
Bruce, what happens to operations at the senior center if we don't approve this?
You get a really bad name. No, it is the center would go on. This particular individual is topped out in her at her current position. She has provided a tremendous benefit to the center. We don't have any depth in terms of our administrative staff, and she is effectively the assistant director, although that's not the position that's being suggested or being requested. But it is important for us to have her upgraded because we couldn't afford to lose her. I don't think we could replace her, the job she's doing, unless we were to seriously consider an upgrade. So we consider it very important, but we have a person in that position who we feel deserves it and has earned it. So that's how we bring it to you here today.
Other comments from the board? Questions? Public comment? Anybody? Don't see any. Motions in order. Supervisor Abel.
I move to approve a reclassification of a Management Assistant 6 classified position to a Department Business Manager, unclassified position within the Senior Center.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second on the motion. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
We
Bruce.
appreciate the long-standing relationship we've had with the board, and in spite of John's recent experience, we would invite you over for lunch anytime. And if you have comments, we accept those too. Thank you.
We're all becoming seniors, so we appreciate your job. Thanks. All right. All right, now let's take up item 18, Evans Broadcasting.
Good morning, Darren
Tell us
Schultz,
what's
Public
going
Works.
on here.
For the record, this item has been before you a couple times in the last 6 months. The general background is the broadcasting lease, Evans. They have a couple of towers, transmission towers, out in the corporate yard, and they've been there 20-plus years. They're outdated, they're really tall, and they're not lit. And their location is troublesome to us now, and also them not being lit is troublesome. So we've been working with the business to possibly relocate the towers, and we came to you a couple times before regarding the lease. We now feel like we have a solution that is palatable to the city in the right direction, and Evans has agreed to relocate, put up a new tower in a location that's not difficult to us, and we can work with, and then establish a new lease for that property. One of the problems with their current towers is it encompasses a lot of space. The towers are tall, and then they go out in a radius, and so it takes up quite a bit of space, and the cost is expensive to the company. So it's kind of a win-win for them and us to move. And so what we have before you here is the distance they're moving isn't, they're still going to be in our corporate yard. We did look around the city for other locations for them to go, but this is the best location that we came up with. They're not going to move that far, but the new tower that they're going to put in is lower. It's also going to be lit, so it solves our problem with emergency access. And so what this arrangement here before you is that we're going to give them 18 months to build in this new site and take down the equipment at their old site, and then they'll just be leasing approximately 1 acre from us as compared to 6 acres. So James Jacklett is here to help me with technical questions on the lease. We've been working through this the last couple months, so we're ready.
Very good. Questions to the board? Go. Anyone go?
We had numerous changes in the lease over the last couple of weeks, and I'm happy with all those changes, so I want to thank staff for working with me on that. They're pretty extensive changes, so I don't really want to go through all of them on the record unless somebody wants us to, but I will answer any questions on what my thinking was in asking for these changes if anybody has had a chance to go through the red line lease.
That brings up a comment that we did submit the final lease as late material. It's not the one that was in the board packet a week and a half ago, so it was submitted yesterday as late material. We have copies of it, and it was published, so everybody should have a comment to that, but it was addressing comments that came from all of you.
I have no objection to the language, and I read it.
Okay. Jim, Supervisor Shirk.
Good morning. Just a quick question. Can they sublease it?
They are not.
They cannot, right?
They cannot.
Okay. No, they wanted to. Thank you.
Actually, they can with authorization, written authorization.
Yes.
Of the lessor.
Yes, that's right. The original question you asked, but yes, if we allow them to sublease, they can, but our intent is never to allow it, so in our mind, it's no, but that's correct. Thanks, Brian.
Any other board? John, go.
Just more a comment. I want to thank you for working with them. When this first came to me, I got a phone call one afternoon that it was going to be closed and the towers torn down within minutes and actually weeks. But you guys worked together, and now we have, I guess, what is a acceptable solution to both parties, so thank you.
Thank you.
Any public?
One more, I'm sorry.
Jim, go.
One other clarification. I'm really sorry. I apologize. 24 access hours, 24 access, if there was a natural disaster, I know there was one question, that we have to give them that access. Is that still part of it?
Yes, in the lease, they need to have access to their site, obviously, to maintain it, or if something goes wrong. What happens in a case when there's a natural disaster and access goes away, it's my understanding in talking with the DA's office, we're all bets are kind of off. We'll help them if we can. They're not their priority is this, it would fall into a priority. We'll respond where we have to first and eventually get to them. In my mind, they wouldn't be the first priority to get them access there, but obviously if they're helping us communicate the natural disaster, then we want to get them up to speed as quickly as possible. The fact that they're located in our corporate yard right next to, where we're all working, it should be pretty easy to get them access to their site. I can't see anything. You never know with a natural event, but.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks. Anybody else on the board? Public? Anybody?
Resolution numbers 2014 R31.
I move to adopt Resolution 2014-R-31 pursuant to NRS 244.2815, subsection 2, a resolution accepting an appraisal and declaring it to be in the best interest of the public to lease 1 acre plus or minus portion of APN 010-031-04 located at 3303 Butteye Way, Carson City, Nevada, to Evans Broadcasting Company, Inc., for the purposes of economic development, without first offering it for rent to the public for less than fair market value during the relocation and fair market value upon relocation or expiration of 18 months, whichever occurs first.
Motion second.
A correction to that, it's the resolution marked as late material dated 12/18/14 and not the original resolution that came in the board package.
Let me see that resolution real quick. Where is it? Where's the resolution? Is that in there? I don't think the resolution's the original one.
Okay, so there were no changes to the resolution from the original packet to the late materials, so.
Just so you don't think, everybody knows I read these things too. Would you look at the fourth line on the, be it further resolved, I think it should say 6 acre. We're missing the word acre. On the fourth line, on be it further resolved, it says allowing this lease an 18-month period of time to relocate from the 6 plus or minus parcel of property. See it there? Right here.
Mr. Mayor, question, is that, Supervisor Gronkowski, is that the resolution or the contract that's the late material?
No, it's the contract that's late material. The resolution didn't change. And we need to incorporate the suggested revision of the mayor. So let me just start over.
That's okay, I think, if you want to start over, fine, go.
Yeah, let me just start over and read it into the record. I move to adopt Resolution 2014-R-31 pursuant to NRS 244.2815, subsection 2, a resolution accepting an appraisal and declaring it to be in the best interest of the public to lease 1 plus or minus acre portion of APN 010-031-04 located at 3303 Butteye Way, Carson City, Nevada, to Evans Broadcasting Company, Inc., for the purposes of economic development, without first offering it to the public for rent to the public for less than fair market value during the relocation and fair market value upon relocation or expiration of 18 months, whichever occurs first, with a correction to the resolution on page 2 of 2, line 4 of the second paragraph, to add the word acre after the numeric number 6 and the plus or minus sign.
There's a motion, a second discussion. Let me just say, one, I've read the changes too, and I intend to vote for this, and Supervisor Gronkowski, I want to thank you for, and whoever else worked on this for, doing making the technical and sometimes there are substantive corrections to the lease, so it's a good deal. All right, on the motion, further discussion, hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay, carried unanimous. Thank you. All right. Let's go to Parks and Rec, 19. Roger, Mr. Mullendorf.
Yeah, good morning. For the record, Roger Mullendorf, Parks and Recreation Director. And I'm here today, I was just thinking that it seemed like it was just a little bit ago that I was up here making a recommendation that we name the Pony Express Pavilion after former Mayor Marv Texera. So now here we are again today with a recommendation for your approval to rename the Edmonds Sports Complex after Pete Livermore and name it the Pete Livermore Sports Complex. And this is a recommendation that's brought forward by primarily the Youth Sports Association, who we know that Pete was a longtime chairman of that committee, the Carson City Parks and Recreation Commission, and of course our department as well. I don't think I have to convince you folks of the involvement that Pete had in the community, specifically with sports youth. He was considered Mr. Carson City Sports Youth. His involvement stretches all the way from the early days of coaching Bobby Sox softball all the way to promoting and being a major promoter of the building of Edmonds Sports Complex and Governor's Field as well. And lifelong commitment to youth sports in Carson City. I think this is a very fitting honor for Pete. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those. And I'm sure there's some people in the audience who want to speak towards this too.
Sure. Any questions of Roger before we do this? I don't see any public comment. Anybody? Not? Oh, good morning. Merry Christmas, Donna. How are you doing this morning?
Donna DePaw for the record. Merry Christmas to all of you too, and Happy New Year. I'd just like to say that I hope you'll go along with supporting this. This is something we brought to the Parks and Recreation Commission 20 years ago, former Commissioner Maroney and I. And I'm glad to see it back, even though it's after the time of Pete's loss. But I know how much he did for the whole community sports-wise, for the Parks and Recreation Commission, for the hospital. Every board and committee he could sit on, he did, and he was proud to serve for everybody. And I would greatly appreciate it if you'd consider changing the name to the Pete. Even Pete's Park would make me happy, but because he was always known as Pete, and he didn't have to have a title in front of him to mean something. So I would really encourage you to change it to the Pete Livermore Sports Complex. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Donna. Any other public comment? Seeing none. Board, we ready? She got it first, you get the second, so, all right.
I move to approve a recommendation from the Parks and Recreation Commission regarding a request from the Carson City Youth Sports Association and the Carson City Parks and Recreation Department to rename the Edmonds Sport Complex the Pete Livermore Sports Complex.
Motion by Supervisor Abad, second by Supervisor Shirk on the motion. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried unanimous. Thank you. I'm sure Pete's looking down.
Can I just make a comment?
Comment is in order. Go.
Donna, you'll be happy to know that last night at the Watershed Conservancy, posthumously, Pete will also be given the Andy Aldax Award for all of his work on the watershed.
Thank you.
Okay. We'll move on to 19B. Schultz Ranch.
You bet. I moved over here because we got a little presentation, but I've got to get the computer on
You want
first.
it? Okay. We'll just stand in place. We won't stay in recess. We'll just stay in place here until you get it going. When you're ready to go, just let me know.
Hey, Roger, while you're getting your computer going, does this resolution naming the park Pete Livermore Park mean that there's got to be some more money spent out there?
Well, obviously, we're going to have to change the sign out. We have those large park monument signs out there that we'll need to change to reflect the new name.
It could use some improvement.
Okay, well, we'll take a look at that as well. Okay, again, Roger Mullendorf, Parks and Recreation Director. And with me is Chris Baker from Manhart Consulting, and he's representing the petitioner for the Landscape Maintenance District issue that we're bringing forward to you today. And today we're asking that the Board of Supervisors accept the Parks and Recreation Commission and staff's recommendation to approve and accept the Schultz Ranch Landscape Maintenance District petition for the planned Schultz Ranch development, with stipulation that the monies raised by the proposed assessment be dedicated solely to the maintenance of the proposed Schultz Ranch development, and to direct the mayor to sign the agreement. Attached in your...
Could you answer one question while you're there? On
Sure.
Why was that direction put in there? Do you need that in order, why wouldn't the funds always be spent on the landscape plan? Why is there a condition in there you can't spend it anywhere else? What's going on there?
Well, that's a good question. That wasn't in the original staff's recommendation to the Park and Recreation Commission, but during our discussion with the Parks and Recreation Commission, they wanted to add that stipulation to the motion. And it was their motion, they passed it, and they approved that motion. So I don't know, John, did you have anything you want to add to that?
Well, since I'm the one that caused it to be in there, basically, if there is another economic emergency like we had, the money is going to go, the money available to Carson City is going to go to public safety, as it did last time, and to keep the basic services alive, and parks suffer. Parks suffer dramatically. These people are paying a dedicated fund into parks so that their park is maintained. And it's the only one like this in the community. This is the first time we're doing this. And so I brought it up at Parks and Rec, and the commissioners thought it wasn't fair for them to pay money into a fund that could be usurped by a Board of Supervisors in the future for other purposes. And unless it's dedicated, then it's just general fund, and it's out there and can be used for the sheriff.
That's what I'd like to, I don't mean to quibble about this. I don't mind the condition at all. It just, to me, I'm concerned that it's surplusage, because I don't know that you could even sweep that fund, because it's not general fund monies as in the sense that we could take it. But, that's all. I mean, it's not a big deal to me. I just don't want to add things when we don't have to do it. But go, Mr. Kramer, go.
Al Kramer, Carson City Treasurer, if I can comment on this briefly. We do have a couple of other special assessments that we call them, that where we collect money for the groundwater basin. And again, even though this money is spent by Carson City, it's dedicated to those groundwater basins, and we usually get a bill from the state or someplace else for the money that's spent on that, and the Department of Taxation to tell us how much we have to collect for that. So we have a precedent. It's not exactly the same, but it's similar. But there is one thing I'd like to add on this. When you say it's for that, you know what? Our office goes through the process of collecting that. We handle that money during the time it's not collected. And I'd like to think that when we allocate costs to the city for the treasurer's office, for the banking functions and that this is not off limits for that for some small amount. And that's my only comment. And I think it fits under the description you have, but I'd not like to let that get lost.
Okay, go.
Okay, we're ready to move forward. Just want to give you a little history. Back in July 5th, 2007, the Board of Supervisors adopted an amended municipal code, Title 17, establishing an ordinance that allows the creation of landscape maintenance districts. And as Supervisor McKenna said, this is now the very first petition that we have received to create a landscape maintenance district within the city associated with a new development. So a landscape maintenance district is basically a defined area within a future or existing residential development that has the ability to assess property owners for the city maintenance of landscape improvements contained within the borders of the district. And the developers are allowed to request the formation of a maintenance district through a petition process. The Parks and Recreation staff has been working very closely with Manhard Consulting, really going back to about, I think, September, when we first started addressing this. And after many revisions and going through the petition, many times and several drafts of it, both the consultant and staff feel that we're at the point where it's a good petition and we're satisfied with the tenants involved in it. And so we're making a recommendation that we approve the petition. There is one item that I think that I should point out that's in the petition that I should inform you of. You probably have seen it when you reviewed the petition, is that normally in the construction and development of residential developments, there is a residential construction tax that's charged at the time of the permit for each residential unit that's being built. That is basically about $1,000 per residential unit. That residential construction tax goes into a fund to help fund the construction of parks, recreation, and landscaping facilities. What this petition is asking is that residential construction tax be waived. And I'll tell you why that is. It's because what we have done in the past, and I think probably the most recent example of that would be Silver Oak development. We charged the residential construction tax for that, the construction of the park facilities and the landscaping, the public facilities involved with that development. Well, the developer then has the option and the opportunity to ask for reimbursement for their expenses in constructing those facilities. And so it really becomes kind of a cumbersome, I guess, paperwork shuffle that we collect the taxes, they provide the invoices and all the official documents showing that they've completed the projects after our inspections and final inspections, and then we reimburse them back the tax that we collected for them for the residential construction tax. It's time-consuming, it's cumbersome, and it is somewhat expensive because it involves really a lot of staff time. And there's a delay in terms of the reimbursement of that money back to the developer. So we are recommending that we waive the residential construction tax. The improvements that the developer has to make for these facilities are part of the development agreement, so they're obligated to make those improvements. Probably if you looked at the improvements overall in the development, we may be talking about $3 million worth of development or cost in making those improvements. At build out, there's 454 homes, so we're, pardon me? 424 homes, thank you. So we'd really only be collecting about $424,000. It's not going to cover the whole cost of the development. The developer is on the hook for the full cost of making these improvements. So I guess in the effort to kind of maybe streamline the process, eliminate a cumbersome process that has been used in the past, we're recommending that we waive the residential construction tax. So I wanted to have that out there in the front to make sure that you folks understood that and knew that that was in the petition.
Questions up here? No, Karen, go.
Chris, we had a conversation offline, and I want to discuss the issue that, Parks and Rec is spelled out in this as being the keeper of the park afterwards, and of course, resources are stretched as it is. Have you looked into contracting out, and how are you covering that?
Is that question to
Either
Chris or
one.
myself?
Either one.
Yeah, one of the considerations and an option is always that the city is going to will be responsible for the maintenance of these facilities. The facilities will be dedicated to the city. They'll become city ownership, public property. An option is that we can perform the maintenance in-house with our in-house crews, or we can contract out that maintenance as well, but it's still our responsibility either way. And that brings up another point too, another question I think Supervisor Shirk had asked me earlier in this week is, will these facilities be available for the public use? And yes, they are publicly owned facilities. They are to be enjoyed by the public as whole, not just the residents of that development. We haven't really made any decisions at this point. Scott Fahrenbrook and I have been talking that probably maybe in the initial stages of as the development improvements come along that we may look at in the initial stages contracting out some portions of the maintenance because they're going to be rather small areas. As it gets a little bit more complicated and the neighborhood park is constructed in the third phase of it, that's when the maintenance gets a little bit more complicated. We think we have a little bit more vested interest in make sure that we provide safe facilities. We're looking at primarily that would be done with in-house sources or forces.
And the fees that are charged to the homeowners to cover this cost would cover at the level of Parks and Rec, and if there's a savings, there's a savings if you do it differently.
That is correct, and Chris is going to give a little presentation. It's going to kind of show the financial plan and how that works in more detail.
Mr. Mayor, Supervisors, Chris Baker
Hold
for
on,
the record.
Chris. Hang on, Chris. I have a technical question for somebody. I want to be clear. I want to make sure that we are all clear on what our action is going to be today. Are we being asked to accept the staff recommendation to accept the petition, or are we being asked to accept the petition? And the reason I ask is because we haven't received the petition with the changes that were made as late material. So I just want us to have a clear understanding of what our action is.
I'll kick it off. That's a good point. We're really recommending that you approve and accept the petition. Now, there are some changes in the wording. We've had discussions with you, Brad, about some of the wording. We've been through the petition many times, and I think we, as I mentioned to you earlier, that probably formed a little bit of groupthink. We understand what we're talking about in some of the terms. There's terms such as landscape maintenance district. There's terms such as common interest areas and common areas. And after receiving your comments and going back and reviewing it, we did, concede that there are probably some areas that those terms are confusing. So we have sent that back to the attorney with Manhart Consultant to kind of do some revision on the wording to try to add clarity to it. It doesn't really make any substantial changes to the petition. It just adds some clarity to the terms that are being used. So I guess what we're really requesting today is that you accept the petition, knowing that we are making changes in terms of clarity to the terms in the agreement. It doesn't really change the substantial portions of the agreement or the petition, though.
So then my question is, which version are we being asked to accept? The version that was part of the board packet, or the one that was sent out either last night or this morning, which has not been marked as late material?
I don't think the version that was sent out yesterday was sent out to everybody. So we're asking you to approve the existing petition, knowing that we're going to have changes in some of the definitions, just in the clarity of the definitions.
Is there a reason to do it without seeing those changes? I mean, is there a time issue going on?
No, there really isn't. I mean, there isn't reason. It's just that the changes were made very late. I mean, if the board is uncomfortable with this, I mean, we could bring back the...
Mr. Mayor, if I could, Roger, I think seeing that we have the brief teed up, what I would recommend would be that we kind of step through the brief. I will bring back, so this will be an informational brief. I will bring back that petition so that you can vote on that clean, amended petition, regardless of whether they are substantive or grammatical changes. I think it's important that you do have the final document. I don't believe we're time critical here, so I think if you agree, we'll go through the presentation here, and then I'll bring back the petition, a clean petition for you to vote on.
I think, I don't think I'm speaking out of turn, but I think that helps a lot. And I mean, nobody's trying to delay this, and I don't, we'll see what the public has to say about it, but I don't sense a whole lot of objection to this. So, but it's a question of dotting the i's and crossing the t's on this thing, so we all know what's going on here. Okay? All right, go.
We certainly do that. We'll be happy to do that. So with that, Chris, would you like to go through the...
Sure. Again, Mr. Mayor, Supervisors, Chris Baker, Manhart Consulting for the record. It's my pleasure to be here today to help assist in presenting this item. As Roger had mentioned, this is the first LMD brought to Carson City. It's our pleasure to do it. I think it's a great tool for development in the future. And our goal here was to kind of lay the foundation for future LMD petitions and development agreements to come forward. With that, I'd like to start at the beginning. What is an LMD? You know, when we got into this in the middle of last year, we all kind of vaguely knew what one was supposed to look like and how it was supposed to function. But for those folks in the audience and maybe for some other members of the community, you know, what is a landscape maintenance district? And Roger just touched on this, but I'll reiterate. Landscape maintenance district is a defined area within a future or existing residential development that has, by municipal ordinance, the ability to assess property owners for city maintenance of landscaped improvements contained within the borders of the district. So essentially what this means is the property owners that surround the improvements through their tax bills help pay for the maintenance. That brings up another question. How are the assessments collected? Or how are they calculated, sorry. The assessments are based on the maintenance costs for the improvements and are assessed to individual property owners. I got a little ahead of myself. Here we go. How do the assessments, oh, did I go too far? I apologize. How are the assessments collected? The assessments will be mailed to property owners with their property tax statements and will have the same force of law as property taxes. When do the assessments begin? This really is the, I don't know if Roger can agree, was kind of the question that really took us about 3 months to figure out. It seems simple in nature, but the triggers to begin when people start actually getting taxed on things, it seems simple, but it is actually, if you read the document, it's relatively complex. I did my best to simplify it. The Phase 1 assessments will begin once the Phase 1 LMD improvements have been completed in accordance with the improvement plans, have undergone final inspection, and have been accepted by Carson City for maintenance purposes. In short terms, no one's paying for maintenance if there's not improvements to maintain. Subsequently, each residential phase or residential lot created by a subdivision map will be subject to an assessment. So what we have is we have Phase 1 that starts the initial assessment, which is, in this case, as you know, 100 lots. So why it's a little bit confusing is, as you guys know, the Shoals Ranch Phase 1 map has already been recorded. What we've done is, so therefore each subsequent phase, so all the other lots that are recorded via subdivision map will actually be part of the assessment, which means unimproved lots will be assessed. What you see in front of you now is what we're calling the Shoals Ranch LMD property. All this hatched area is the property that will ultimately contain improvements and will be owned by Carson City. Again, the improvements will be paid for in full by the developer and turned over once completed to Carson City. What we've done is break this down into 4 phases, and the phases really follow the overarching development agreement that binds this Shoals Ranch property now. What we have for Phase 1, which is again included with the already recorded Phase 1 map, it realistically is all of the right-of-way and common area immediately adjacent to Racetrack Road, which is the backbone roadway. This phase includes, 67,000 odd square feet of landscaped right-of-way and common area. Phase 2 is relatively small in nature. This will come online with the recordation of the Phase 2 map, which contains 105 lots. Again, relatively small in nature. It just contains some linear pathways that are focused on connectivity to the outside neighborhoods, roughly 17,000 square foot of those. Phase 3 is kind of the nuts and bolts of the LMD. This is where the centralized neighborhood park comes online. Also, there's the southernmost detention area and park area, and then the backbone roadway of Racetrack Road that right-of-way also is included. So you get 227,000 odd square feet of park area, roughly 11,000 square feet of linear pathways, and 40,000 odd square feet of additional landscaped right-of-way. Phase 4 also there's another park area to the north, which is, again, dual purpose. It functions as a detention basin and is a nice landscape park area. And then there is an existing gas line easement that runs north to south there that you can see. We have made a connection east-west. So throughout the development, without using the street network, you can get to the park to the north. So what's included in Phase 4 is roughly 67,000 square feet of additional park area and nearly 43,000 square foot of linear pathways. For me, this page here really summarizes that 70-odd page document very well. This is the financial summary. Again, all of the information that we've been working on since September is really to generate this page, as funny as that sounds. All of the landscape concepts that Sandra Wendell, myself, Roger, Scott, and Vern came up with for these areas were really based on coming up with how much the maintenance cost would be to take care of these. So I think there's a few ways we could have done this. We could have gone out to an outside source and got a maintenance fee. Knowing that ultimately the city was going to be on the hook for this, we wanted to go straight to the source. So I think Scott was great in working with us to come up with a realistic cost for this. And this cost is reflected in this financial summary. So I'll direct you to the far left column, which says year. That assumes a 7-year build out, as you can see. What we've done is base this on the existing development agreement and state law as it relates to final maps. So we're assuming, again, not construction of these lots, but recordation of these maps every 2 years. And then I'll point you to the maintenance costs column, and then the annual assessment per lot and the LMD assessment revenue. So I'll run you through this. As mentioned, the first 100 lots have already recorded. When those improvements are in place, accepted by Carson, the assessments begin. The maintenance cost for Phase 1 is roughly $20,000. The annual assessment per lot is roughly $210. That would be a little too much. And then the LMD revenue from that first phase is a little over $21,000. You combine that with the initial startup deposit of $5,000, which we put forth just because I don't think anyone wants to start something off zero. So I think $5,000 just for initial operating will cover it. At the end of year 1, you have a little over $11,000 in the pot. That's after maintaining the assessments for the improvements for year 1. I'll point you to year 3 is when Phase 2 comes online. As you can see, another 105 lots come into play, so you have 205 lots that you would be assessing. The share or the maintenance costs for that don't really jump up too significantly. They only go up roughly $4,000. And the assessment revenue goes up drastically, up to $52,000. Again, this is all, we're trying to front load this, so when the larger maintenance costs come online in Phase 3, we have money in the coffers for that. So I will direct you down to year 5, which is when Phase 3 does come online. At that point, we have 324 lots that will be assessed. The maintenance costs, as you can see, jump up significantly, $191,000+. I will point out that the assessments are increasing by no more than 10%. We wanted to make sure that the first property owners in were only paying kind of a pro rata share for what was in. I didn't think it was fair for somebody to buy the first house and have to pay for 4 to 6 years for a park that wasn't there. So we did our best to keep the assessment fee as low as possible to pay for the improvements that are actually represented on the ground. So as you can see, with that, let's see, the assessed revenue is $99,000 at that point, and we still, after even having the park come online, we still have a plus of $57,000. I could take you all the way down to full build-out at the 424 lots. This is where everything ties in full circle. The goal here was to have the maintenance costs and the assessment revenue be equal, which they are. The LMD shared maintenance cost is at that point $157,000, and the assessment revenue is the same. We will at that point have an excess of roughly $31,000 for any unforeseen costs that we really didn't cover. I will point out there is because I know the question's probably going to come, the city share maintenance cost column. This all comes from the allocation plan. What happens here is the municipal code states all things that can be actually immediately accessed by the public are paid for by the public at a 30% share. So for example, the landscaped right-of-ways and the parks, the assessment actually only covers 70% of those. The city share is another 30%. Everything else, being the linear paths and the interior paths and things, are 100% covered by the assessment. So with that, I'll kind of point you down to a couple notes. One, like I pointed out, the initial assessment cost is $210,000 per lot, and again, that's obviously a yearly fee. Like I pointed out, the 10% annual assessment increases, no more than 10% increase till full build out. The ultimate build out assessment fee is estimated to be $372.22. I think this is relatively important. The billing cycle for the assessments will be the same as the billing cycle for real property taxes. Assessment amounts will be prorated for partial years. Therefore, if someone buys a lot or a subdivision map is recorded in the middle of the fiscal year, they will only be required to pay for their pro rata share.
How long does the assessment stay in place, the tax assessment?
Forever.
So the numbers up there, Chris, are they maintenance or are they construction dollars?
They are only maintenance. Construction will be covered 100% by the developer.
Well, they're maintenance, but they include depreciation.
Correct. Yeah.
And is there a provision in here that says if you complete phase one but no other phases, what happens to the assessment? Stays it?
The assessment, well, the assessment would stay as is until an additional map was recorded. Once a map was recorded, then those unimproved lots would still be paid for.
All right.
And again, this is designed to be a working document. Carson's code relating to LMDs, this is, and Roger, you can probably touch on this a little bit. These are forecasts. Once hard numbers are in place, those hard numbers will be applied. And it talks about in code that this needs to be revisited approximately every 5 years. So this is really kind of getting us through. We were required per code to only forecast for the first 5 years. Since we were in a development agreement that actually took us through 7, we thought it was foolish to only forecast for 5. So I think this is our best attempt at that initial shot. I think Supervisor Bronkowski brought up a great point. In the review of this document, Parks, myself, Crown West, we all sat in meetings, numerous meetings, and we all understood what we thought we were talking about, to be frank. And our goal here was to have a document that, in 5, 7, 10 years is very clear. We were bound by some terminology in code that would define, for example, the LMD was not supposed to be called an LMD. It was supposed to be called a maintenance district, and the properties included in that maintenance district were supposed to be called the maintenance district properties. Well, when you put those words in a 70-odd page legal document 100 plus times, it gets a little repetitive and it gets relatively confusing. So I think those comments were very well needed, and I appreciate those. So what we've done is, in light of those, is go in and kind of take a stab at replacing some of that language and putting legal language in there that goes outside of the Schedule 1, which was included, was required to be included for Carson Code, and we've just really changed some of the terminology. Again, the substance of the document, the workings, the startup, how things are going to function don't change at all. What we're proposing to do, just to simplify what might come back to you as an information item later, in an attempt to, like I said, simplify and clarify, is change the term property, which was something that was directed to us by the code, to Shoals Ranch property. And again, this will define the entire boundary of the Shoals Ranch development and include all the properties that have the ability to be assessed. And then the maintenance district property to landscape maintenance district property. And that will be reflective of the hatched areas that I showed you on the previous exhibit. So those are the changes that we were talking about and were kind of sent around in an informal fashion. So just to bring you up to speed. Thank you for your time.
Any other comments from the board? Public comment? Anybody want to weigh in on this first? Dave, come on up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the board, and I appreciate you letting me take comments. Neither Mr. Kramer nor I were involved in any of these conversations, so we have no idea and didn't know anything that was going on until today. A couple of concerns that I have is the fact that I do see that there's a 10% annual assessment increase until the proposed build-out. As a person who fields many calls, anytime property taxes change, it's difficult to try and explain to a taxpayer why something is going up. What concerns me is the fact that there is no limit or no maximum amount for an increase after that time period. Where with property taxes, there's a 3% cap on the tax itself. In this case, there's no limit as far as what kind of an increase can go on it. That concerns me. The second thing, and I've seen this in the past, is preferably what I'd like, and I don't know if this can be addressed or not, but I would really, really strongly suggest that when the properties are sold, that there be a document of some sort recorded saying that these people are aware of this landscape agreement and the proposed increases and how that will affect their taxes. It needs to be recorded for the original owner and subsequent owners on it. The third suggestion is an annual statement. I would really, as a person who explains all of these to the taxpayers, I would like to be able to show them where these funds are dedicated to for the year that are proposed. I think it would help us out quite a bit. And so if that could be arranged, that would be great. As far as the proration of it, now you may want to come up on this one. That's not something that we can do very easily. And I do have to give it to Al, because when the assessments are collected, it's all handled through the treasurer's office. And so this is something that's going to have to be hand calculated for all parcels or all parcels that are coming on through a prorated amount.
We had a special assessment district once on Graves Lane College Parkway. And when that was done, whenever there was a parcel split and that assessment had to be changed, those numbers were provided to us, in that case by Loomis Engineering. And what I'm hoping is that Dave or I in our offices aren't sitting there trying to calculate what this prorated amount would be, but that we would be given a list of here's the parcel number and here's the amount each year in about May, so that we can create that ongoing assessment. And if there is a proration, then it's done by whatever that entity is, and I don't see it being parks, but maybe it's the homeowners association or something like that that would say, here's how this assessment's going to be for next year. And if it's the same amount for each parcel, that's easy. We just do from range 1 through 424, assign this much to each one. But if they're different, in order to accommodate the computer system we have, we need to know what it is by parcel number for each one of those. So I'm thinking this is an assessment that's run, in a sense, by the homeowners association or whatever entity there. I mean, who owns this? Who owns this? Who's going to distribute the money for this? Is it Parks? If it's Parks, then fine. I don't see that decision-making being done by my office. I see it being given to me to say, assign these assessments there. Okay. Dave, does that answer your question too? Yeah.
Just maybe to, just to touch.
Clarity, I think we're just looking for that kind of clarity.
Yeah, and well, I think we've had this conversation over the phone at least, and that's the intent is that decision-making be done by the Parks and Recreation Department. Now, going back to the other question about, if you have your petition in front of you, page 41 is basically the notice of maintenance district assessment, and that is given to the property owners at the time that the lot is recorded or the lot is purchased. So they are notice that there will be an assessment, also has the amount.
Is it recorded?
Yeah, yeah. And, as far as capping the assessment amount, I can understand, you're concerned about that, but we also have to realize that there's not going to be a cap on the maintenance costs. And so over time, as maintenance costs increase, the intent of this petition of the district is that the homeowners, the residents of that area will pay their equal share of the maintenance of the property. So I would be concerned from the other end that if we capped it, that as time went on, we may be talking 20 years or so, that those maintenance costs will exceed the assessment amount, and the share of will be a larger burden on the city to cover the cost of the maintenance for those improvements in that district. So I would suggest that we don't cap the assessment costs.
That's it's an interesting concept, because normally with a common interest community, and this maintenance district is in lieu of a common interest community, you have a board that a homeowner can go speak to provide input or guidance on expenses. So if Parks is the one determining what maintenance is being done, the level of service being done, and what those costs are, what is the avenue of appeal or input for a homeowner in the district if they're concerned with the amount of money being spent on maintenance?
Well, I think the final appeal board is always the Board of Supervisors. I think that's where it would come to if there was a problem in that nature.
But we're not setting the rate.
No.
I don't know how I don't know. Oh, a little cumbersome.
I think it's more of a level of service issue. You're determining the level of service. The homeowners may want more service or less service. So is there a mechanism that can be put into place whereby homeowners have some input into that decision if they're not happy with the amount of money being spent, either too much or too little? I guess that's my question.
Good question. I guess we could look at, developing some type of a board that could get the input from the homeowners in terms of levels of service and the amount of assessment. That might be a function that we could give to the Park and Recreation Commission, or set up a separate board of homeowners that would meet with the department to talk about those kinds of concerns.
Is there going to be an issue with development standards? So you may want to answer this. There's development standards on landscaping, and we're required to maintain those development standards. So that has to be taken into account as well on level of service.
Hey, Roger, if I could also, Supervisor Bunkowski, if you refer, I think, to page 62 of the petition, you'll kind of see the matrix of the schedule. This is, in fact, based off of a standard, and I think it's, Roger, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's level 1 of our master plan for Parks and Rec. And I think we have other examples in here. I don't know if we can get that up, but we have other examples of similar turf maintenance and landscape maintenance we do throughout the city at other facilities. It's standard. It's a standard procedure. In most cases, I'm not aware of any complaint from residents who live around any of those other facilities. I understand the possibility does exist that there could be complaints and we need to be able to address them, but this plan was based off of an existing standard that the city has.
Right. I recognize this from the Parks Master Plan.
Right, exactly.
But the difference here is that the homeowners are being assessed for the cost of this, where in other parts of the city, they're not. So I guess what I'm asking for is, can we think about a process whereby the homeowners that are in this assessment district have some form of input or appeal if they have objections? And I don't know that they will, but if we don't put a mechanism into place, we're going to have to deal with it later.
Yeah, I think, we could simply, as I mentioned before, we could look at the Park and Recreation Commission as being an appeal board for this process. We can give some more thought to that. Maybe it would be representatives of the homeowners or the property owners as well.
Could you explain to me how there could be a problem if the money is raised from the people that live there and spent on their property? How there could ever be a problem where if the city can't get its hands on this money, and that money has to be spent on the property where those homeowners live, they may have internal discussions about it, but how can that become a city problem?
Well, I think maybe what Supervisor Bonkowski might be saying is that there may be some concerns and differences about the level of service. And the residents and the property owners of that district may want either a higher level of maintenance or may want a lower level of maintenance. So the higher level of maintenance would be easy to adjust. And I guess it would be either way, but we could simply meet with, have some type of a hearing, some type of board or some type of representation to talk to about the levels of service and how that would equate then to the assessment.
But Roger, I'd like you to double your efforts in Riverview Park. I'd like you to double your efforts in Livermore Park. Where do we come? I mean, the procedure's already there to handle any problems. And this doesn't change anything as long as that money stays with the property.
Let's see, I don't know. Go then, Karen. Okay. Go ahead, Jim. Go.
This circles back a little bit to the first question I asked, which was, at what point would homeowners have the opportunity to say, you know what, we could save a little money on our assessment if you contract it out. Could we look at a cost comparison with regards to that? So somewhere down the line, I think that sort of decision-making has to be aired.
Again, Chris Baker for the record. And what I would like to point out is these forecasts are for a 5-year period. I see, if there's a drastic increase in maintenance costs or the choice is for, say, phases 1 and 2 through the first 5 years or 4 years, it doesn't make financial sense for the city to be maintaining and they want to outsource it. Obviously, those costs will be reflected in their assessment costs. So, the level of service, again, is governed in the petition, in the document, by the maintenance, table in the Parks Master Plan. But I think the overall sense is you're going to get what you pay for. If you want higher quality of standards in your neighborhood parks that you're getting assessed, your assessment's going to go up. And if you want lower quality assessments, maybe outsourcing or doing whatever, you will probably have a reflected lower assessment cost. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. So again, these are numbers based on Carson City maintaining them and, put in play over, the 424 lots and the estimated build out of 7 years or recordation of the maps in 7 years. These might stand and be the actual numbers, but realistically, they're probably going to modify a little bit here and there.
Well, I understand what the board is asking, the questions about the interaction between the city and the property owners who live there. But also, these parks are going to be accessible to the general public. So should the public come to these facilities and say, hey, I'm not getting my money for my tax dollars. Now we're going to have to deal with the entity of the public saying, I want this, I want that, at these public areas because they're paying for it with their tax dollars versus the property owners who are being assessed for it and paying for it as well. So now you got two entities arguing about the maintenance and the upkeep or whatever's going on in those public areas. So I think it's a conversation here, I think is going to have conversations down the line in the future, which I don't know if we're equipped to deal with because I think staff is going to be more involved in it, and I don't know where that money is going to be coming from to compensate taxpayers as well. I think it's a big problem, I think.
Well, I think you bring up a good point, but I think that's already in place. I mean, the public can always be concerned about the level of service and maintenance that's provided in any of the, public facilities, including parks. And, I think the public is always concerned about their tax dollars going, if they're being well spent, and if the level of services reflect the taxes that they paid. Ultimately, again, that question not only comes to our department, but also comes to you as a board. So
But I think,
I'm not sure
Roger, what I was alluding
changes.
to was that you have the public input on parks, I get that, but you have property owners being assessed to pay for something, and now you got two entities deciding on a public access what is right and what is wrong, because those property owners who are being assessed may want that lowered and don't want it mowed 3 times a week or 2 times a week, or they don't want this, they don't want to pay for it. But the public wants access to it, so I think it is a problem. I understand your point of view, but I do think I bring up a good point as well.
Conversely, if this district doesn't exist and we go through the standard process, what would happen? Parks would take care of the park based upon whatever standard the city decided upon.
Well, John, you bring up a good point too, because the intent of the landscape maintenance district was to recoup the cost of the maintenance of that property. And again, as we go through the development agreement, the developer is basically mandated to make certain improvements to the development. Now, as I mentioned before, with the residential construction tax, we've always had some kind of mechanism there to at least offset some of the cost of building these facilities. We've never had in the past had any kind of tool or mechanism that can offset the cost of the maintenance of these facilities after they're built. And that's really the whole idea behind the landscape maintenance district, is provide that opportunity so that the city has a funding mechanism to maintain the properties that are mandated to the developer.
Fascinating discussion. Let me ask you, just maybe go back to square zero for me. Who sets the rate, the tax rate? Who does that?
That is set by our department. We look at the real-time.
So Parks does that? And currently, there's no cap on what that rate can be, right?
That is correct.
Okay. Go to page 41 and 42 of the petition here. Are you with me? Assume we're in year 5. Who is the Schultz Ranch Maintenance District? Who is that? And maybe you could tell me who that is by who signs this document. Who would sign this document, and what is their capacity for signing it?
Mr. Mayor, is the question on page 42, who signs the document?
Yeah.
That would be by the property owner. So initially, this would be done by, say a subdivision map is recorded, say in phase 2.
Yeah, but wait a minute, it's not signed by the property owner. It says you are notified, so somebody has to sign that. That's a notice of this is what your
Are you
assessment.
talking about you are further notified, Carson City as follows?
Right, so somebody has to sign this on page 2. Who is that?
Yeah.
That's the Parks.
That would be the Parks and Recreation Department.
Okay, and fill in a blank on the second to the last paragraph on page 1, of that, on 41, page 41. Who is that blank?
This blank is by the property owner.
No.
On 42?
On page 41, it says, you are further notified that the information about the maintenance district, the petition, the assessment, and the assessment amount for each lot may be obtained by contacting Carson City as follows. There's a blank there. Who is that?
That blank is intended, at that point, that's going to be Parks, is who you're going to contact.
So what we're doing here then is Parks and Recreation is really a landscape district? Is that what they are?
I think maybe the
And I appreciate that this is
No, it's a
novel
good question.
stuff here, but I'm just
No,
trying
it's a good
to
question.
figure out, because I think that somebody's going to have to run this drill when the first time a homeowner complains about their tax like it's been raised here.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to have to understand this and go for it.
I think the Parks and Recreation District is not the landscape maintenance district, but we're the managers of the landscape maintenance district.
Okay, well, I think you need to think through some of these things. I'm more I hear about it. I mean, I'm just, I don't, we'll get it brought back here and we'll see if we can nuance some of these things, and because I know that you're dealing with a code that, doesn't have those particulars to it. It's just got what you're doing, and we're drafting around that, so I got that. All right. John?
Trying to help. So I buy a house out there, and I get this document saying I'm going to pay a homeowner's fee for maintenance of my parks. And then I get a notice from the Landscape Maintenance District signed by Roger Mollendorf as Parks and Rec Director that that fee is going to be Y dollars. And I get angry and I call Roger up and say, why is it going to be that? And I sit down with Roger and he explains it, and I either agree or disagree. If I disagree, who do I protest to? I guess Parks and Rec and the Board of Supervisors. But change that. We don't do this. And I'm a homeowner and I get my property tax bill. And in there's an amount dedicated to Parks and Rec for maintaining parks. So I call the assessor and the treasurer and yell at them, and they tell me to go talk to the supervisors. I don't see a whole lot of difference here.
No, that is in fact correct, and if you pull up the code, that is exactly the appeal process.
Okay. Public comment, anybody? Come on.
Mayor, Board, Garrett Lapierre, local real estate agent, so I get to talk to you a little bit about what I do for a living and my thoughts on this. There's a few points that were brought up earlier that I think are really good points. Mr. Dolly hit two things right on the head with the fact that there should be a disclosure, not only for the first homeowner, but all subsequent homeowners. Because it's not a common interest community, it wouldn't fall under the current disclosure law that's there for common interest communities. So having that in place, I think, would solve maybe a future lawsuit down the road of homeowners saying, I didn't know I had to pay that. So some kind of disclosure, I think, would be very necessary. Also, have to have a cap somewhere. If I'm a consumer looking at this subdivision to buy there, knowing that my fees could go up to whatever, no cap at all, you have to have some sort of cap, whatever that number is. I think that would be important. And lastly, Mr. Bogkowski, you brought up a good point as well. Have to have some kind of board, some kind of oversight to where I can come have these issues. I'm sure you guys don't want to talk about landscape district issues at a Board of Supervisors meeting. So whether that's creating a community a committee or something like that, I think it's a great idea. I think it's outside the box. I think it can very much be workable and be done. Just a couple little things to tweak it to make sure that there's no future problems down the road. Thank you.
Garrett, how do common interest communities in the real estate world set a cap on common interest charges?
That's probably a little above my pay grade, but what my concern there is when you buy into a common interest community, you are disclosed right up front, and you also have a 5-day rescission period once you receive all the documents for that common interest community. So you receive the rules and regulations, budgets, financials, things like that. If you don't like that, you have 5 days, irregardless of whether you're 2 weeks into a transaction or 3 weeks into a transaction, to back out without any penalty. Having something like that with the disclosure that says, here's the financials, here's what you're going to be charged, and this is not going to go away, it gives the people an opportunity to say no thanks without being held liable for breaching a contract.
Okay. Well, I guess I go back and forth on whether there should be a cap or not, because I suspect that if, my sense is that if the board is the one, if Parks and Rec, which is really us, if they're setting the rate, then there is a cap, because it's got to come here. I guess it's got to come here. Or maybe we just delegating the ability to set it. I mean, if Parks and Rec is a district, maybe you have your own taxing authority, I guess. I don't know how you do that, but we'll work through this stuff, I think. All right.
Thank you for hearing me.
Thanks. All right. The more I talk, the more that's all right. You know, don't get upset, guys. I mean, because it is a different animal, so we'll deal with it. All right. Anything further? Then we're going to take a break, and then we'll come back. All right. Thanks very much. Let's please work with Al and Dave back there to make sure that we've got their issues covered, please. And then we'll go. When you're ready to fill in the blanks and all that stuff, do it. Bring it on back, and then we'll go from there. Okay. Thanks. All right. We'll be in recess for 10 minutes. Supervisors, back to order. We're now on item 20A. This is an action to approve Susan Pintar as the health officer. She's been our health officer for a while. She is, in my view, one heck of a health officer. She toes the line, toes the mark. Is tough, smart. Members of the public want to weigh in on this issue? Seeing none, board members? Motion's in order.
I move to approve contract number 1415-114 pursuant to NRS 332115 subsection 1B to find that Susan Pintar, MD, is qualified to serve as the Carson City Health Officer, to appoint Susan Pintar, MD, as the Carson City Health Officer pursuant to CCMC 9.01.030 to CCMC 9.01.050, to set the compensation of the health officer, WIC physician nutrition support, at a not-to-exceed amount of $28,400 per calendar year, to be paid in equal monthly payments of $2,366.67 from January 1, 2015 through December 31 of 2016, which will be funded 30% from the WIC contractual account in the grant fund and 70% from the Health Administration Professional Services account in the general fund, as provided in fiscal year 2014-2015 and fiscal year 2015-2016.
Second.
Motion and second. Discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried. Unanimous, I think. There we are. I know it is. Okay. But now, Kim, take up, sorry to just move forward. But
Good morning. Kim Belt, Purchasing Contracts. Morning, Mayor.
take up 20B.
Supervisor. 20B.
Yeah.
This is to authorize Carson City Parks and Rec to purchase food, beverage, vendor services from Capital Beverages pursuant to NRS 332.115.1 subsection E. For the purchase, this is a exempt from public bidding because of the perishable goods of the items that we're asking for. This is the contract to provide the vendor services at the concession stands at the ice rink and at the various sports facilities. This is a contract asking for $63,250 to be funded from the Parks and Rec and the ice rink supplies operating account. Just for clarification, the fiscal impact should be $63,250, and the explanation of impact, it should say $63,250 also. If there's specific questions on
we got some, but I want to go to the city manager first. Nick, go.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've had a number of questions on this. As Kim has already pointed out, this will provide the beverages for our concessions, mainly Centennial Park, but also other facilities. We do turn a pretty decent profit on these items. I've got Roger Mollendorf here, the Parks Director. If you have specific questions as to where the profits are then applied, but these items do turn a profit for the city.
I think it's good to know. The question might be that, I understand it's the perishable goods exemption. Why can't others do this? I mean, it seems as though, what we're asking for is supplies and things like that for it.
Right.
I have to think that there's a whole lot of people who do that out there.
Right, we could do that. Parks and Rec had requested this contract, and I can ask the Parks and Rec to explain the
All right,
reasoning behind why they
All
didn't bid.
Roger.
Again, Roger Mullendorf, Parks and Recreation Director. I guess the perishable portion of the nature of the contract, or why we're not putting it out for bid, we're simply taking advantage of the NRS that allows us to do so. We work with several other contractors or vendors for other types of concession supplies. Basically, with Capital Beverage, we really look at the main product we're buying from them are beer, water, those type of liquid beverages. And They are.
We're selling beer at ice rink?
No, not the ice rink, we don't. But we do sell beer at the concession stand up at John D. Winter Centennial Park. At the ice skating rink, the only beverages we're selling are beer, hot chocolate, those type of beverages, non-alcoholic beverages.
Not beer. You said beer.
Did I say beer?
Yes.
We're trying to get beer in there. But no, we don't sell beer, just non-alcoholic beverages at the ice skating rink.
Well, and the reason we don't shop this or bid it is what again, please?
Well, there's a NRS that allows us not to.
I
have to
understand it
shop
allows it, but I mean, it seems to me like there's other entities that could do this. And listen, I don't have any difficulty with capital beverages. I'm just trying to figure out why we don't offer this out for bid. I mean, because it's not, beer and nuts and soft drinks, I mean, I understand they're perishable, but they are provided by a myriad of vendors.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, got it. Okay.
So I guess my answer to you is why we don't. It's just been standard practice. We haven't. That doesn't mean it's the right answer, but that's the standard practice we've used in the past.
Do we know, I mean, the $63,000, do we know what that covers? I mean, how much beer that is, how much, we know all the details about that.
We do.
So you could RFP, you could put a proposal out and see what people want to do.
We could.
Okay.
We could do that.
We'll see. All right, see where it goes. I got a couple questions here. Supervisor Shirk, then Supervisor McKenna.
I was going to ask, the city manager mentioned a profit, where the funds go from reselling this?
Good question. The funds, the profit, the revenues that we generate from the sales of our concessions go into the general fund revenue account. So we have an account that says, for instance, ice rink revenues, they would go into that. It doesn't necessarily directly go back to that program, but it goes into the general fund revenue, which help offsets the cost of providing those type of programs.
And how many years has Capital been providing this service for the city?
Oh, I couldn't answer that. It's been many years.
Are there any other Carson City businesses that could provide comparable service?
There may be. I'd have to investigate that and look at that.
Well, I think in some way we need to limit it to Carson City. I mean,
okay.
I'm getting negative responses over here, like it's either Capital Beverage or nobody.
No, I think the head shake was, respectfully, you could not limit it just to Carson City.
Yeah.
So since I'm leaving here, it's either Carson City business or nobody.
Since you're leaving here, you can say about anything you want, I guess.
What he's really trying to say is we'll comply with the law and go on. Okay. All right, public comment? Anybody? Board? What do you want to do? Do you want to do this one more year or put it out for bid?
One more year.
What do you want to do?
Okay, so we're on, let me get to my right place here. I'll make a motion. 20B. Sorry for the delay. I move to authorize Carson City Parks and Recreation to purchase food, beverage, vendor services on an as-needed basis pursuant to NRS 332.1151E, and therefore not suitable for public bidding from Capital Beverages for a not-to-exceed cost of $63,250 to be funded from the Recreation and Ice Rink Supplies operating account as provided in fiscal year 2014-2015.
There's a motion and second. Discussion?
Yes.
Discussion's in order. Go.
I do think that it's in the best interest of the public that we do put contracts like this out to bid in the future. So I don't have an objection to approving this contract today, but going forward, I would like to see that go out to bid. I think that the public would like to see that go out to bid.
Okay.
I echo that, and Jim, sorry.
I echo that as well. Just off curiosity, excuse me, forgot to turn that on. Curiosity, you do recover this amount of money though, right?
We do recover this and more.
Okay.
We have a profit markup built into our pricing.
Right.
So we do make a profit off these products.
And I think it would be behooving to all of us and to the public, should these things, when these contracts come forward, they go out to the public for
Okay.
bidding, not just, we seem to go through this procedure a lot where we're not sending it out to bid, and I think Brad made a good point that it should be put out there. So, thank you.
You bet.
Anything further, Joe?
Arguing with the prevailing wisdom, we have a business that pays Carson City property tax, pays Carson City gas tax, pays Carson City. This is a very generous business in Carson City to nonprofits, et cetera. The fact that the NRS does not allow Carson City to take care of itself and does not value the ancillary benefits of having a local business involved in the community, I think a little hometownism is very appropriate, and I think the people of Carson City want us to do that.
I have to agree with John. I think that he's absolutely right. We do need to support our own as well.
Okay.
I'm going to violate my own rule and ask one question.
Okay.
Can you buy a Coors at, if we do this, can you buy a Coors at the athletic field?
Do you have a preference towards
No, I'm just
Coors?
asking you, can you buy a Coors?
You know, I don't think we have Coors up there, but I can check and see we have.
Well, that's the issue.
Yeah,
Understand where I'm going with that?
yeah.
That's the
Coors.
issue.
You know, whenever you buy from a distributor, you're going to be buying from the product that they handle.
That's the issue.
Yeah.
Okay, so take it from there. All right, on the motion for the,
And Mr. Mayor, and if Rotary is going to put on a fundraiser and we need somebody to donate product, Capital Beverage is always there for us.
well, I don't have any difficulty with that. I mean, I think that, you know.
And I'll drink a Bud if it's for charity.
Well,
I'll be nice.
and, you know, now that I go down this road, I think maybe, you know, I've represented Anheuser-Busch, the brewer, for years, for 25 years. So, Joe, if that's a conflict, I better just disclose and stay out, so. But I think I'm going to disclose that, but I'm going to vote, so, okay? Because it really is, it's kind of distant, but, okay. All right, on the motion, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, nay, carried. All right, put it out to bid next year, okay? All right. Let's go to
20C.
B, C.
Right. This is a request to, Public Works is recommending to approve Amendment Number 1 to Contract 1314-113 to GML Architects. This is a contract for fleet facility expansion, A&E design and construction administration, and to increase the contract term. Currently, the contract term expires December 31st, 2014. We're requesting it to extend it to December 31st, 2015. There is currently, the contract is for $125,000. We've expended $121,000 of this contract. The remainder is for the construction administration, which is currently going on. That project is under construction now, and it won't be completed by December 31st, 2014. So this is to continue that. Is there any questions?
I do have a question.
Questions in order.
The number that you just mentioned, the 121,057.52, according to our packet, that's the balance that's still left, not the amount that's
Right.
been dispersed?
There's only 100. We paid them 103 to date,
Okay,
and we're not asking for additional money. I'm sorry, apologize for that.
thank you.
There's 125,000 left in the fund balance in the account.
Okay, John, or Jim, question?
Kim, we paid them, as you said, $103,000. How much have they completed the project, percentage-wise? Do we have an idea?
This is for design services for the project, and they've probably completed approximately 80% of the scope that they have.
And is there a reason you need a such a lengthy period of time to complete a whole
Yeah,
another year?
Frankly, Darren Schultz, for the record, I apologize. I feel like we're wasting your time. When we do these contracts, we need to look better. At the time when we did this, we knew we would not be done by the end of this year. So we just messed up from the beginning. And yes, we think we're going to be done with this contract in April, but I don't want to come back here in April and extend the contract 2 more months. So we're just going to.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Okay, public comment, anybody? Motion's in order.
I move to accept Public Works' recommendation to approve Amendment Number 1 to Contract Number 1314-113 with GML Architects, LLC, titled Fleet Facility Expansion AE Design and Construction Administration, to increase the contract term from December 31st, 2014 to December 31st, 2015.
Motion, a couple seconds on the motion, discussion. Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Carried unanimous. Okay. Take up the Charles Abbott one.
Okay, this is item 20D. This is Carson City Community Development Department's recommendation to approve Amendment Number 1 to Contract 1415-050 with Charles Abbott Associates. The contract is titled the Building Permit Services. They're requesting to expand the scope of work, and they revised the attachment 1, which is included in your packet, and they're also asking to increase the contract amount for additional services. Lee Plemmel's here to answer any questions specifically about the contract, if you have any.
Let's see if there are any questions first. Anybody? Seems pretty clear what's going on here. Go.
Morning, Lee.
Morning.
I emailed you my questions about I just had a quick question about the historic averages. I was just trying to get an idea of percentages, how much our historic fees have been in the past, and what would that mean in the end result for the percentages that are going to be paid for this service?
Is this just is the answer in here?
It's right here.
Oh, right. Yeah, so in here, I think you're referencing, if I could, referring to, I think it's the last page of your document, which is the fee schedule. Can I, if I can back up a little bit, give a little bit of background on this. So the initial contract that we're amending was made with Charles Abbott when building official resigned at about the same time as inspector retiring, and the contract was done to replace those services initially. This current amendment is before you because we had a city employee that was also working as the building permit technician under still a city employee, has since resigned and got another job in Reno doing the same thing. So we took a look at putting those services also under the contract services, and one of the main reasons for that is that employee can then be under the direct supervision of the building official. As a city employee, couldn't do that. And we're also looking at possibly realizing some cost savings, which leads to the question about this. How does that these percentages relate to the amount of revenues that we've collected? So there's a section in attachment 1 that's the fee that states something to the what it states is that the consultant agrees to provide additional plan review or inspections resources to assure the city is never short-staffed, and should building revenues fall below historic averages, the city agrees to be flexible in the minimum number of certified building inspectors. So kind of that sentence taken in whole is meant to be that we have a certain level. If the inspector only needs to be there 4 hours a day instead of 8 hours a day, that we'll allow that an inspector doesn't have to happen. So to the question about historical averages, is not specifically defined. We had revenues in last fiscal year, we had revenues of approximately, oh, that's okay, now I refer to this. Last fiscal year, we had building permit revenues of about $544,000. And we budgeted to approximately that amount. We've actually budgeted for a little bit less this year. In the prior year, it was $330,000, so it was more than actually more than $200,000 less. So those historical averages are actually pretty low. But again, the intent of that is just the only intent of that historical averages is just to allow us to look at that, and if the permit fees drop to a certain level, that means the actual workload is dropping because we're not getting the permits in, and we're going to work with them so they don't have to necessarily provide an inspector there 8 hours a day if it's not necessary. The only other thing I would say before answering questions is, so based on last year's permit revenues and based on what's budgeted this year, we would expect to save a little bit of money for the city under these proposed increase in fees that we're paying to Charles Abbott Associates, which is basically across the board at 10%. There's a scale and attachment one you can see, but it's basically across the board a 10% increase. But we would still, for them to provide this service, we would see a little bit of a savings to the city versus hiring somebody under the budget that was already approved by the city for that position.
Thank you.
Lee, you actually sent me those numbers, so I'll read them into the record. If we meet projections for 14-15 building permits, the 10% increase would equate to about $53,000. The building permit technician position was budgeted for $65,000 annually, so there'd be a savings of approximately $12,000.
And I'd also note Ray Profit is here from Charles Abbott Associates, representing them. Previously, Buster Scholl was here. He had a flight cancellation from Southern California and unfortunately couldn't make it. But if you have any questions, Ray is here from Charles Abbott.
Ray, why don't you come on up while we're doing this and just tell us how you're doing over there, please. Running into problems, you have a can-do attitude. What's happening here?
That is our attitude.
Okay.
Ray Profit, for the record. To let you know, one of the things that we do look at is what was anticipated in the amount of revenue. Last month, anticipated revenue was budgeted at $44,000. Actual revenue last month was only $22,000. But we take all of that into account, and we're doing good as far as being able to maintain staff. Our attitude as far as being able to handle all of the calls, all of the plan review, the work that is expected of us is being done, and we believe in a timely manner. Any complaints that we receive, we are handling as well, and making sure that we're trying to provide the customer service that is necessary to run a business, which is what the city is trying to do as well.
Thanks. Okay. Public comment? Anybody? Yeah, come on up. Builders Association, come on up.
Mr. Mayor, Supervisors, for the record, Aaron West with Builders Alliance. Thank you. I wanted to come up and show support, being involved in the process and encouraging, the transition to Charles Abbott. We have stayed very close to this topic, continue to have regular meetings with Charles Abbott and the staff, as well as dialogue with our members to make sure that the needs are being met and the customer service, as you pointed out, is where it needs to be. We're very comfortable with the job that's being done with Charles Abbott, and we see this as a logical progression of the expansion of the services to the private sector, and very supportive. Thank you.
Thanks, Aaron, and thanks to your organization for kind of keeping involved, put it like that. All right. Other public comment? Anybody? Don't see any. Motions in order. John.
I move to accept Carson City Community Development Department's recommendation to approve amendment number 1 to contract number 1415-050 with Charles Abbott Associates Incorporated, titled Building Permit Services, to expand the scope of work, revised attachment 1, to include building permit counter services, and increase the contract amount for an amount established solely from a percentage of building permit fees collected as identified in Exhibit A to be funded from the Building Division building permit revenues as provided in fiscal year 2014-2015 and fiscal year 2015-2016.
Motion in a couple seconds on the motion. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried unanimous. Okay, take up Eurofin.
Mayor, just real quick, back on that item, so
Back?
under the Charles Abbott item, so there is a building permit technician position available that Charles Abbott is seeking. You know, they're not flying somebody in from out of town for this. They're looking for local people that have experience in the building field to fill this position. So I just wanted to note that for the record for anybody interested. Thank you.
Very good. Well done. All right.
Lee, would they apply through your office or would they apply through Charles Abbott's office?
Yeah, if somebody's watching, this information is available at the HR department. It's through Charles Abbott, but they can get information from the city's HR department regarding it. Thank you.
This item is to determine that contract 1415-117 is a contract for professional services and therefore not suitable for public bidding. This is a contract for Eurofin's Eden Analytical through December 31st, 2016 for an amount of $272,720 to be split over a 3-year period. And I handed out some sheets, the last dollar amount written in numbers wasn't included. That sheet's on there, and also Exhibit A was not tagged right. So those pages were handed out. This is a contract to do drinking water quality testing for the Nevada Department of Environmental Protection Regulations. Carson Public Works is asking for this contract. And if there's specific questions about the contract and the services, David Burkett is here to discuss that. This is also, the samples are done throughout the citywide. They have different testing sites throughout the city that they do on a regular basis, the testing for the city. And they get the result. They send the samples to the Eurofins and they get the results from Eurofins.
DA seen the, Joe, has the DA seen the addendum to item 20E, the independent contractor agreement, the changes? No. Okay. All right, David, come on up.
Morning, Mr. Mayor, Supervisors, David Bruchetta, Public Works.
Any questions of David?
How much did we pay last year?
I don't know the exact amount, but we budget every year about $125,000, and we're very close to that amount.
And David, you're non-compliant if you don't do this, correct?
Well, that's correct. We have to meet the national drinking water standards. And this amount, this is, we come every year, we talk about this every year, we come forth with this, and this is for, instead of doing this every year, just doing it for 2 years. And Eurofin Eaton's is who we've been sending it to. There are laboratories up in Reno, but this is a professional service that you have to be specifically certified. Engineers have to be certified in Nevada. Architects have to be certified. Laboratories have to be certified for the tests that they perform in Nevada. Eurofin Eaton's has, well, it's in the attachment, a huge list. They're probably the largest, if not one of the largest, drinking water testing laboratories in the United States. And so a lot of our laboratories in Reno do some of this testing, but the majority of the testing they actually outsource to Eurofin Eaton. So we are providing value to the ratepayers by actually going directly to them. We do have some testing that goes up to the Reno laboratories. There are no certified laboratories here in Carson City specifically.
Jim.
David, you mentioned you budgeted $125,000 annually, but this contract's for $272,000.
Correct. And this is a 2-year contract. So some years we have more testing, some years we have less. In the attachment, you see the 2 years, and those are rough estimates. Yeah. Thank you. Sorry. And so some of the years we have more testing than others, and sometimes we have to do duplicate testing. If a site has a problem, has a high level, has a trigger point, we may have to do more testing. So on average, we're about $125,000 a year. There are some testing next year that's coming up, and you'll see it in the attachment, some additional testing we don't have to do every year. So next year's a little bit higher, and we'll bring forth funds from this year, the excess from this year, to cover that cost. And then the following year, it should be a little bit lower. So it'll all balance out.
And how long have we used this service?
I don't know exactly the number of years. I'd say probably at least 3 to 4 years, specifically to Eurofin Eaton's.
And there's, as you mentioned earlier, they're one of the biggest facilities to do this testing.
Yes.
The idea that we could get somebody else to look at this and give us a bid on that, is that possibility out there that we could have somebody else bid on this?
I mean, that's always a possibility, yes. We're going directly to the source to get the best value to the ratepayers, because the Reno laboratories, a lot of this is very specific testing. So they're not certified in the state of Nevada to do this testing, so they have to outsource it.
Thank you.
Okay, public comment? Anybody? Board, we okay? Motion's in order.
I move to determine that contract number 1415-117 is a contract for professional services and therefore not suitable for public bidding pursuant to NRS 332.115, and to approve contract number 1415-117, a request for professional services to be provided by Eurofin Eaton Analytical through December 31st, 2016, for an amount not to exceed $272,720, to be funded from the Public Works Laboratory Expense Account in the Water Utility Fund as provided in fiscal year 2014-2015, fiscal year 2015-2016, and fiscal year 2016-2017, with 2 corrections. The first being under paragraph 5.1, second line from the bottom, adding the numeric number $104,450, and the fee schedule on the last page of our package being properly labeled as Exhibit A.
Second.
Motion and a second. On the motion, all in discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried unanimous.
Thank you.
Kim. All right, let's take up 21A. This is a request by to planning, community development, to apply to the SHPO office, the state of Nevada, for a grant for up to $75,000. Anybody have any questions with this one? Anybody? Any public comments on this one? Motion's in order.
I move to submit an application to the Nevada State Historic Preservation Office on behalf of the National Park Service for the 2015 Historic Preservation Fund Grant to prepare historic structure reports for buildings at the Nevada State Prison identified as contributing resources in the prison's National Register of Historic Places nomination.
Motion in a couple seconds on the motion. All in favor signify by saying, huh? I thought I did discussion already. Huh? Oh, discussion, right.
Just wanted to make a note that on this item, the fiscal impact shows 0, but there's a $50,000 match by Carson City, but it's an in-kind match, so there's no actual dollars that are changing it.
Correct.
Good call. Good discussion. All right. Sorry for running over discussion. All right. On the motion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried unanimous. Thank you very much. Thanks,
Thank
Brad.
you.
All right. Sorry to, is that okay, Susan? We just kind of.
That's great.
I'm sorry. Take up the issue for block grant action. We've had a hearing on this matter. Lee, anything come out of the hearing on it?
No, this item, this is, was heard about a month ago by the Board of Supervisors to open the public comment period. We've received no public comments regarding this proposed action to transfer the award of $20,743 in CDBG Community Development Block Grant funds from Fish's Janelle Street property to their Long Street property.
Public comment? Board comments or questions? Motion's in order. Comment.
When this came up previously, I had indicated that my preference was to have these funds roll over and have our committee that vets these decisions make a decision on this next year. So I intend to vote against this for that same reason.
Okay. Further discussion. On the motion, is there a motion? Somebody want to make a motion, then we'll tee it up and see if it goes in. Okay.
I move to approve a proposed amendment to Carson City's Community Development Block Grant, CDBG 2014-2015 Annual Action Plan to reallocate the funds dedicated for the Fish Janelle Drive Building renovation project to be used for improvements at the Fish facility at 138 East Long Street.
Motion second on discussion. I'll just say that from my part, I understand where Supervisor Binkowski's coming from, but I also think that the CDBG process allows for a reallocation if you go through a public hearing, which we've done, and that's the legal manner of which it's done. So on the motion, any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay?
Nay.
Okay. Let's take up 22, the community development. This is for information only. Mr. Rutledge, you going to do this? Who's going to do this? Lee, you doing it? You ready?
I am. I'm going to pull up a map of the area here. Should be working to come up there. I'm still thinking. Introduce that again for the record. Lee Plemmel, Community Development Director. The initial intent of getting this item onto the Board of Supervisors agenda here was to initially provide just an update, an overview of the process that we'll need to go through to implement a commercial area vitalization district, which would be an assessment of the property owners within a given district, in this case the downtown area, the assessment for which would be used sort of like a landscape maintenance district. It would be an assessment for the maintenance of...
I don't know if you should say that.
I heard that conversation, yeah.
Okay.
Sorry. Okay, I can see that a little better now. Yeah, an assessment for the maintenance of the Carson Street improvements related to the downtown Carson Street improvement project. So the details of the process are in a memo that Larry had done a couple of years ago. Larry Werner had done a couple of years ago, outlining kind of all of the NRS sections that are applicable. The process really boils down to a simple process. The property owners representing at least 50% of the assessed valuation within the given area that's chosen come into the city, provide a petition saying they want to be included in this maintenance district. We send notices out. We have a noticing period ahead of the time, and we bring an ordinance to the Board of Supervisors to implement the district. That's kind of the simple part. The details are in the provisions of that ordinance and the petition that comes forward, and I think that's mostly the purpose of this discussion. We know that we're presenting the details or the process, but John Rutledge, representing the property owners that have indicated willingness to do this, have provided.
I think he would tell you he doesn't represent the property owners, but he is a collector of information.
He is a collector of information. That's right.
All right.
I would agree with that. But
okay.
And we'll continue to work with them and all the property owners as we go through this. But what he has provided on the last page of your packet is kind of an outline of his thoughts on how this assessment would go forward. Basically, the map up there, that's on the screen there for the audience. So this is kind of the general area this is the area as described in his document that would be the downtown assessment district. I would note that this district is to assess for the Carson Street improvements only. There's Curry Street improvements that will come a couple years behind the downtown Carson Street improvements, and we expect that this district would be amended at that time to include it. But because the Carson Street improvements will be coming forward first and separate from Curry Street in construction, even though we're going to have the design of those done together in 2015. The initial assessment will be just for Carson Street, so I wanted to point that out. As well, and I know John has, after hearing some information. So this has kind of been a work in progress, working with John and other property owners. And I know he has some other thoughts in addition after hearing some other comments about how they see the downtown maintenance district working. So maybe it'd be appropriate for him to come up and talk about this before I get too far into it. But that's kind of a general overview of the purpose of this. We hope to come away with some comments so that we can go back and work out the details with the property owners to be able to come back with something that's going to be acceptable to the property owners and city to provide for maintenance, so that the city is not, with the initial intent being that the city is not going to incur additional maintenance costs from what the city already provides for Carson Street.
Okay. Information only, so come on up, Mr. Rutledge. Come on.
Good morning, John Rutledge for the record. Lee is correct in that we're attempting to both incorporate feedback from the other property owners who have and are in the process of responding to this initial kind of synopsis that was sent out. And additionally, we're going to incorporate some of the comments that were received with regard to the landscape maintenance district discussion earlier today. Happy to answer any questions anybody has.
Hi, John.
Hi.
It was my understanding that in forming a community area vitalization district, you'll form your own board, correct? Unlike what we were talking about earlier with the landscape maintenance district, who would have, they would decide how the monies collected were spent with regards to maintenance.
That's correct. Yeah, it would be a nonprofit organization, probably a corporation that would be formed. It would, via the members, select its own board, and the board would be making the administrative decisions.
Other comments, Supervisor Shirk, go, Jim.
Behind the Nugget, the property that's behind the Nugget in City Hall, why is that being incorporated into it and no other property outside the downtown corridor? Why does that fall into this?
Ask me that one more time, please.
Behind the Carson Nugget and behind City Hall, those properties, why are they being incorporated into the downtown narrowing Carson Street, or however you want to say that? Yeah, all of that.
You know, I don't know the exact answer to that, other than that I believe that it's the common ownership, so it's almost like a common development. Common ownership. Yeah.
Yeah, and I believe that's the reason. It has common ownership with the Nugget property, and again, I think so that they will be submitting the petition as property owners of that property. So I think right now they have chosen to be included in the district, and I think they do have a benefit. And as so I drew the line like this because, as John described it, they also have those direct perpendicular street access onto Carson Street. So.
Understood. But if that property owner is going to be part of this, and any other property owner on Carson Street own property behind Carson Street, should they be also part of it, that property as well, if they're going to benefit as the Carson Nugget is?
I believe the thinking was the common ownership on the frontage. So that the Carson Nugget is actually on Carson, and they also, as part of that common scheme of ownership, own the parking lots and other structures, a little motel there and whatnot.
Do any other property owners have frontage along Carson Street with property behind that would benefit as well?
Not that I'm aware of, no, not within that proposed district.
Not contiguous like that. There are certainly there's some ownership within the red area that has ownership outside the red area, right. Certainly. Again, what we're gonna, the process we see this going through is that there's two ways to do this. This could be at the request and initiation of the property owners, or it could be at the initiation of the city. We see this process, and the way it's going is by the support that they've gotten together. This is going to be by petition from them. So they're going to come to us and determine ultimately what this area is that's going to pay that assessment. So right now, it's this. And again, I think some of those properties to the west, which orienting everybody on this map, north is to the Carson Street runs left to right in this, and west is straight up. So some of those property owners to the west that might have some common ownership will probably will very likely be included as the Curry Street improvements get added to it.
Thank you.
Other comments? Public comment? Garrett? Thanks,
Thank you
John.
for your time.
Okay.
Morning, Mayor, Board. Garrett Lapeer, downtown property owner, and also member of RAC, but I'm not here to talk as a member of RAC, just as a downtown property owner that will be part of this district. Couple questions. Is the CAV and BID, is that the same thing? Just
Yes.
different acronym?
Yes.
Okay. Right now, redevelopment has a budget of roughly $2 million, and they pay for the maintenance in this area already. To the tune of about $50,000 a year, snow removal, things like that. All I would like to see is just a discussion, whether that's here or at the RAC level or both levels, of why create another fee when it's already being paid from the redevelopment fund. I don't see why to do that. I haven't seen any good reason or heard any good explanation as to why there needs to be an additional fee above and beyond that. I don't know if the redevelopment area expires at some point, something like that. That's all I would like to see, is just some sort of discussion of why create another fee when it's already being paid from the redevelopment fund, maybe with some of the shuffling of employees as well, would open up some of those redevelopment funds to keep that, $50,000 level. If it's going to stay in that $50,000 range to maintain this. If it's $500,000, well, that's a different story. But $50,000, I think could be paid from redevelopment funds. And I think at least should be a discussion, and there certainly should be a discussion on the RAC committee at the RAC level. So that's all I'm here today. I think you know how I feel about the downtown plan and all that, but at least let's have a discussion of, can it be funded through redevelopment funds as
Right.
it's already being paid?
All right, Garrett.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, other public comment? Don't see any. Board, anybody? Yeah, shoot.
Just to answer the question, so I think I took it for granted a little bit in the presentation, but the reason that we're even here to this point talking about the maintenance, the commercial area vitalization district is the term that's used in NRS, so it's a form of business improvement district. But the reason we're even considering this is because we got direction after a lot of discussion months ago with the project from the Board of Supervisors that the board did not want to incur additional cost to the city for the maintenance. So it's anticipated that with the more intense kind of pedestrian improvements for a section of Carson Street, there's going to be some additional maintenance, cleaning of sidewalks, trash pickup, whatever else there may be, that would cost a little bit more than what the city is paying now. So, and that's what we, and doing an estimate with Public Works and looking at it, we do anticipate a little bit of an increase in the maintenance cost, and so that was the purpose of bringing the maintenance district back.
Sure.
There were the city certainly could fund that increase, but that's not the direction we've been given by the board based on discussions we've had thus far.
Also, Lee, you will also have it now on Carson Street, you're going to have benches, chairs, and other things that will need maintenance and upkeep, and that's part of the reason this is coming to fruition, is to take care of that so the city or even redevelopment, people who are taxed who don't even live in that area, their redevelopment or have businesses in that area, their redevelopment funding is not going for the maintenance of park benches, seats, and so forth in that area. I know it's a fine line, but there is a reason for this to come forward to take care of this rather than take it out of redevelopment.
Yeah, and regarding benches, going forward with this process in conjunction with the design is important, because what the funding that's available and implemented through this assessment has an influence on what the design will be as we go forward. In other words, if we wanted a lot of benches that required wood painting every year. You know, you can design things that are lower maintenance, or you can have a lot of amenities that require high maintenance or labor intensive year after year and would increase it. So working with them on the district, the maintenance district, early in this process is important, because it can influence the design as we go forward over the next year.
And this also incorporates snow removal from the sidewalk from this organization. Is that correct?
Yes.
Lee, there's a provision in the memorandum from Larry that explains a procedure where anybody that has an exclusively residential property within the district can protest or opt out. But it is our intention to make sure that there are no exclusively residential properties included in the district. Is that correct?
That's correct. And actually, if you look on the Curry Street side, the upper portion of that, and again, this is draft. This is not final, but this is based on kind of my discussions with John and others so far. But there's a couple notches in there that are actually properties that have residences on them, whether or not, they're not necessarily 100% residential and may be able to be included, but but that's what that is, to exclude residential properties.
And then you and I had also had a discussion about, on the last page of the memorandum, there's a provision to put a 5% annual year-over-year cap on the assessments. And I had suggested that if we're going to have a cap, that we also have a floor in case CPI goes negative. And in fact, it looks like for last quarter, the CPI is negative. So I would like to have that incorporated in going forward too, please.
That's amazing. CPI went negative?
Because of gas.
Because of gas. Fascinating. Thank you. All right. Anybody else want to weigh in? This is information only? Anybody? Are we ready then to move on? Thank you, Lee. Thank you, Mr. Rutledge. Thank you, Garrett, for your...
Thanks for, I'd like to thank John for adjusting his schedule today to his busy schedule to come down. Thank you.
Not as busy as I'd like, but yeah.
Okay, let's take up item 23A. Nick, this is yours.
Thank you, Mayor. We might need a minute or two to hook up on the computer on the next item. We could probably do this one real quick and then...
Okay, anybody have any questions on the expenditures? Motions in order.
I move to accept the report on the condition of each fund in the Treasury and the statements of receipts and expenditures through December 9th, 2014 per NRS 251.030 and NRS 354.290.
Motion and a couple seconds on a motion. Discussion. Public discussion. Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Carried unanimous. Okay, now we'll just kind of stay in place right here, and we'll take up items 23B and C because they're kind of related here. We'll do the CAFR and then we'll do the corrective action at the same time, because they're going to be related. All right, so Mr. Providenti, you let me know when you've got all lined up, and we've got Kafuri Armstrong ready to go too. Okay?
Okay. Actually, just for the record, Kafori Armstrong is no longer. They merged with Eide Bailey. So it is now the accounting firm of Eide Bailey, right? And I don't know if...
It is, yeah. But just given that we issued the financial statements under Kafori Armstrong, our report say Kafori Armstrong, we're here kind of presenting as Kafori Armstrong today. But as of Monday, we are now officially Eide Bailey LLP.
As of this past Monday?
Monday the 15th, yeah.
Let me just ask, just to clarify the record. Because of that, are there any issues that we should be aware of with respect to our reliance on this report from Kafuri Armstrong?
Not at all.
All right, go. John.
Before you start on that same thing, is that going to cause us any changes, different offices, different people, different requirements, other than just a change in letterhead?
No, we definitely don't expect any change in people. It'll be same teams on the go-forward basis. I guess that being said, this was the last year of our contract. The audit goes out to bid next year. So if we're lucky enough to come back next year, it would be same teams, very similar fee structure, all handled out of the Reno office, just as it always has been, so.
As long as we're discussing that, any change in risk, reliance, et cetera, they're a full-service accounting firm, they've got a reputation, et cetera. I'm not familiar with them.
Yeah, absolutely. Bailey's one of the top 25 accounting firms in the nation, so it definitely provides us more resources to be able to service Carson City. We go from having 10 partners and about 75 people to having 215 partners and 1,500 people. We've got a national audit office and just quite a bit more expertise that we can rely on for, unusual items that may come up on a go-forward basis. All right, and sorry, I guess for the record, Dan Carter, the engagement shareholder on the Carson City external audit. So we jump into the presentation. I always like to refer people back to and let them know that all the numbers from the presentation come right from the CAFR that you guys have all been provided. And MD&A on pages 4A through 4J of the CAFR is kind of a plain language, straightforward explanation of what all happened this year as it relates to the finances of the city. So I always try and direct people there for some thrilling reading. Got nothing better to do. What we'll go through today is kind of the 2014 fiscal highlights. We'll talk about the summary of audit results, and then we'll discuss briefly a little bit what will be affecting the city next year from an accounting standards basis. So this slide focuses on the governmental activities. This is on a government-wide basis and includes kind of the combination of the general fund, special revenue funds, debt service funds, capital projects funds, and internal service funds. You can see last year compared to this year, assets were up about $1.7 million. Liabilities were up about $6.9 million, and leading to an overall decline in net position of about $4.9 million. The primary increase in the assets was related to increase in capital assets, and then the increases in liabilities related to some additional long-term debt and an increase in the OPEB obligation. And I guess I'd just say, definitely don't hesitate to stop at any time while we're on these slides and ask questions. If we look at the statement of activities, again, for the governmental funds on a government-wide basis, you can see that overall revenues increased just about $400,000 from last year. Expenses are up about $5.2 million over last year, again, leading to a decrease in net position from last year to this year. The primary driver for the increase in revenues was C-Tax. And then the expenses kind of increased across the board, general government, public safety, public works, all up slightly, not one specific thing that led to that increase. This chart kind of breaks down the revenues by source for the governmental activities, just where your primary revenues come in for the city. Very, very similar to prior years, with property taxes being first, consolidated taxes being second, and other taxes being third. On the other side, where the money is going out, this is expenses by function for governmental activities. And again, similar to last year, public safety takes the top spot. General government comes in at number 2. And then actually public works beat out culture and rec for the number 3 spot. And that was actually backwards last year, so.
Yes.
And then if we look specifically at the general fund, this is revenues versus expenses over the last 5 years.
Interrupting you, why
Absolutely.
did Public Works take the lead? Is it because of the changes to the projects we have going, or is it?
It's probably because of the capital projects, I suspect, and some additional grants. I mean, it's fairly close.
It is very close.
It's not a change in emphasis, though.
I don't think so, no. No, I think it's just the cycle. I mean, they're doing quite a bit of, it probably has to deal a lot with the transit. They probably bought a couple of buses. I don't know, Nancy, do you know? No? Yeah, we'd have to look that up, but.
And I definitely don't think it's significant. Like Nick said, I think Public Works was maybe 9.4, 9.5 last year, so we're talking just a couple $100,000.
And public safety is just the fire department and the sheriff's department? Or is
That's
there others?
correct. Right. And I believe juvenile is in that as well. Juvenile probation, juvenile detention, that section, alternative sentencing.
All right, so again, revenues versus expenses over the last 5 years for the general fund. You can see a slight increase, $1.2 million in revenue, and expenses are up about 2.1. And again, just real minor increases across the board, not any one function that led to those increases. And then this breaks down the fund balance of the general fund. The light green up there is your unassigned. This is the fund balance that the city's allowed to spend on pretty much anything. The light blue is the assigned fund balance. Those are based on internal restrictions. For example, the subsequent year budget shortfall. The other big piece of that is the health department. The red is the restricted fund balance. These are externally restricted amounts. Typically, they relate to grants or statutes. And then that bottom little piece, the dark blue, is non-spendable. And that's just amounts that are sitting in fund balance that are non-spendable format, like inventories or prepaids. It's not anything you can actually go spend. And then if we go back and look at kind of on the government-wide basis for the business type activities, this is sewer, water, ambulance, cemetery. Again, capital assets increasing just ever so slightly, or sorry, assets increasing ever so slightly, primarily due to capital assets. Liabilities up a little bit, and then net assets down just about $1 million, but very, very consistent with prior years. And then again, revenue and expense. For the business type activities, revenue and expense both up slightly, nothing too significant, but expense outpacing revenues just a little bit, leading to that decrease in net position. So that's what I've got for fiscal highlights. Any other questions on that before we move into audit results?
I have a question. In looking at the spendable revenue, do you have any opinion, knowing our deferred maintenance costs and all the rest of that that's on the table, if we're in a position to start putting some money away in the rainy day fund?
That's a good question. I know the city has a goal of, or a minimum fund balance, unrestricted fund balance of 5% with a goal to get to 8.3%, and we're not actually at 8.3% yet. So that's definitely more of a management decision.
I mean, my answer would be no, not at this point. We're still, if you look at this year compared to last year, basically we're still kind of bumping along, and, we think we've hit bottom, and we haven't, we're starting to kind of climb up a little bit, but, we're in no way out of, any we're just not in a fiscal euphoria yet, We've gotten 3 months worth of data for this fiscal year, and the data, the sales tax data is good. So, it's hard to trend 3 months for the whole year. So we're still, we're planning on, waiting till we have about 6 months worth of data before we prepare the budget, before we do our estimates in the next couple months, 3 months. So we'll know a little bit better of how things will be in the next, 2 or 3 months. Right now, I think we're good, but we're not great. I don't think we need to do anything drastic, but I'm not sure that we can, start socking away money into a stabilization fund, unfortunately. And I think the main reason is probably because of the deferred maintenance issues that we're having. I mean, we're hoping to maybe kick a little bit of money in and spend some money on some much-needed deferred maintenance items in this next budget cycle. So, I mean, it's something that we'll be looking at over the next few months. So that's kind of my take.
I'll hold on to that term, fiscal euphoria.
I was going to ask him, how do we know when we've hit fiscal euphoria?
It's kind of like pornography. You know it when you see it, right?
But maybe just to reiterate next point, I think there's a couple slides in here that definitely show, and this is consistent amongst several of our clients in the area, is that we have kind of hopefully seen that bottom where we've got a couple years very, very consistent in revenues. Again, this is the slide on governmental activities, revenue and expense. And then from the business type activities, you can see the last couple years have been very consistent, and so we're hopefully finding that bottom and heading into euphoria, so to speak. So if there's no other questions on the fiscal stuff, we could jump into audit results. So as a result of our audit, we issue 3 separate reports for the city. The independent auditor's report on the basic financial statements, which is included on pages 1 to 3 of the CAFR. The independent auditor's report on internal control over financial reporting and on compliance and other matters, based on an audit of financial statements performed in accordance with government auditing standards. Really long title. We typically refer to it as the Yellow Book report. And then the last one is the independent auditor's report on compliance for each major federal program and report on internal control over compliance required by OMB Circular A-133. This is the single audit that we do over the federal expenditures of the city. So I'm happy to report that the city did receive an unmodified opinion. This is the highest level of assurance that we can provide. The compliance with NRS and NAC is always disclosed in Note 2B to the financial statements on page 27. And you'll see there were 2 apparent budget violations. One in the ambulance fund of $8,800 and then one in the cemetery fund of approximately $29,000. But overall, from the financial perspective, a very, very clean audit.
We have another agenda item for the mitigation of those budget. You want to talk about them then? You want to talk about them now?
We can go ahead and talk about them now. What we're planning on doing, like I said, is...
No, before you get into that, the question I have is how were they caused? Were they caused by the auditor going through and somebody didn't make a proper entry? Were they
Well,
money
I like
stolen?
to blame a lot of things on the auditor, but we really can't blame this on the auditor. No, this is something that we, if you look at I don't know if you wanted to look at the next agenda item, there's an actual memo attached, kind of explaining the two items. Basically what happened in the ambulance enterprise fund, what we do is we make accrual entries. As you know, the enterprise funds are full accrual accounting. So we make a lot of adjustments after year end for certain things based on balances. So this was a result of a non-cash adjustment to the accrued compensated absences amount when actual payouts exceeded our estimates due to retirement of a battalion chief during the year. So when we originally did the budget, we just didn't budget enough for these payouts for a battalion chief that had retired. So in the future, we just need to we'll take greater care in re-estimating these accrued compensated absences in the enterprise funds during the
Why didn't
augmentation
somebody
process.
catch it before year end, or does it make any difference?
Well, I mean, we made a judgment decision in May, and it just didn't come to fruition. I mean, when we were doing the actual adjustments in, August or September, when we actually did the adjustments, we just didn't budget enough for it. So, I mean, it was just an error. We have to make certain assumptions when we're doing these budgets, and we just didn't budget enough for this payout. So, I mean.
Does it tell us you need more staff?
Well,
what does it tell us?
It probably tells us that we need to take greater care in re-estimating accrued compensated absences in the future. I don't know if that more staff would have done would have done any difference, would have made any difference. I mean, we just made an error. We just didn't budget it. We just didn't budget enough in this fund. And that's really all I can say. I mean, it's not like we overspent, we spent more cash than, it was an accrual, a non-cash accrual adjusting entry. So
it's one of those things that happens when you deal with human beings type thing?
Correct.
Okay.
Right. Right. And I think the same thing happened in the Cemetery Enterprise Fund. The other post-employment benefit amounts and accrued compensated absences amounts were greater than we originally budgeted. There's only 2 employees in that fund. So when we originally did the budget, we hadn't negotiated the CCEA contract. And that contract wasn't negotiated until January. So we didn't really necessarily know the accrued compensated absences. When we originally budgeted the amounts, they only got paid for up to 240 hours of sick leave total, and the new contract allowed for up to 1,040 hours of sick leave payments. So that difference wasn't budgeted originally. And again, it was one of those things that, we have to just take a little bit better care. And typically those things don't happen every year because the contracts are typically 3 or 4 years. We'll just have to do a little bit better, take better care. And that issue shouldn't happen because I don't imagine any of the other benefits will be adjusted. I mean, the benefits are about as good as they're going to get, I suspect. And another thing I wanted to note is that we're planning on taking these back to the audit committee as well and making sure that, our procedures are kind of identified to them and they'll be kind of keeping an eye on these types of issues as well. So we promised that we would go back in February with these items and make sure that they're satisfied with our solutions, as well. So that's another thing that we're planning on doing as well. So.
All right, so moving on, this is the Yellow Book report. And I always like to point out this isn't an expression of an opinion, like where we opine on the financial statements, we aren't actually opining on the internal controls of the city. We don't audit them, but we do consider them as part of designing our audit procedures. If we identify deficiencies, either significant deficiencies or material weaknesses, we do report them to the board. However, this year I'm happy to report there were none identified. And if we move into the single audit, again, this is the expenditures of federal grant money. Again, we have an unmodified opinion on compliance, the highest assurance we can provide. And then as it relates to the internal control over compliance, we did actually end up identifying 5 significant deficiencies. Corrective action plans have been developed by management, and they're included in the CAFR and referenced from our findings. Basically, maybe from big picture perspective for the federal expenditures, the city had $7 million in expenditures this year, which is up slightly from $6.5 million in the prior year. We audited 4 major programs totaling about $2 million, covering about 30% of those expenditures. We audited the Federal Transit Cluster, Family Planning Services, Prevention and Public Health Capacity Building, Assistance to Strengthen Public Health, Immunization, Infrastructure and Performance, and the National Bioterrorism Hospital Preparedness Program. The findings are in there. We could go through them briefly if you want. We had 2 related to basically, it was a time card issue, and this affected both the Public Works Department and the Health Department. When employees are working on multiple grants, they need to break out their time and certify how much time is spent on each grant so it can be charged appropriately. We pulled several time cards, I think about 30 time cards across the 2 programs, and we found, I believe, 7 or 8 where that documentation wasn't included. And then we had 2 other findings that were related to reporting issues, again, both for Public Works and the health departments. And it's a tough one. The federal reports are very complex, and the information they ask for doesn't come out of the city's system easily. There's some manipulation that has to occur. And so basically we just found that the reports were either incomplete or inaccurate. And then our last finding was a matching issue.
Dan, can I stop you there? How are they going to rectify that if the information doesn't come out easily from how they keep record?
Yeah, I think it just takes a little bit more effort on the city's part to double check those numbers as they're accumulating that information to make sure the right information gets included on the reports.
Right, so basically, it's the program manager, the folks that are managing these grants, it's really on them to make sure that they're providing the right reporting requirements to the federal government. So, I mean, it's basically their responsibility, and I know, you know, we accept these grants, and when you're accepting this money, you actually have to accept all the responsibility that goes with it. So we're trying to make that, you know, make the managers aware that it's really not our responsibility to do this. It's your responsibility as the program manager to make sure that every one of the, you know, the grant requirements are fulfilled. So, you know, it's going to take some educating on our part. And again, we're planning on bringing, you know, these back and these folks, these people back to the audit committee to kind of make them accountable to the audit committee. So, you know, we're trying to really make them aware that this is very important, that they may, you know, if they're going to accept this money, that they have to accept the responsibilities that go along with it, you know, to the federal government. And we're requiring them to come before the audit committee to kind of make sure that, you know, these requirements continue to happen. So.
This brings up an interesting question about whether or not the city would benefit from an overriding grant coordinator. Number one, would it help with the compliance issues going from department to department, but also would it provide us a resource to identify and go after additional grants,
right,
especially when we have Health and Human Services that's very dependent, as is RTC, on grant funds.
Right.
So maybe that's something that we could incorporate into our strategic planning session.
No, I agree with that, and I believe, you know, we had that position in the past with Heidi Eskew Herman, and, you know, she has left, I don't know how long it's been, 3-4 years now, but I think she was very helpful with those types of things, you know, not only in, you know, in getting the grants, you know, getting the money in, but also on the reporting requirements, which is very important as well. So, no, I think it's a good idea.
And then just our final finding was a matching issue. Basically, again, it was in the health department claiming expenses as matching contributions that didn't really relate to the program. I think it was related to vehicles and fleet management, maintenance, fuel, depreciation, those sort of things. Any other questions on the single audit? We do follow up on prior year's findings. We had just one finding last year. It was a reporting finding under the CDBG program, and corrective action had been fully implemented this year when we followed up on that. So that's it for audit results. Just wanted to point out one very significant new standard that will affect the city next year. It's GASB 68, and it's the accounting and financial reporting for pensions. This is, and I think we talked about this briefly last year, Nevada PERS has implemented GASB 67 this year, which is the accounting for the plan. And as of June 30, 2015, basically the city will need to report its portion of the net pension liability for the NV PERS program. Tough to tell exactly what that'll look like at this point. NV PERS will be preparing a schedule that breaks it down. In their June 30, 2014 audited financial statements, that liability is $10,421 million. It's about 76.3% funded, which certainly isn't bad. But the city's portion of that $10 billion number will be reported as a liability on your financial statements next year. So that's a new thing. A little too early to tell what those numbers might look like.
What do you think will happen to us? Our bond rating will be declined, we'll have less money to spend. It's just a number that goes on a piece of paper.
I think the latter.
Yeah, and I would
It's just
agree
a
with
number
that,
goes
yeah.
on a piece of paper.
Nothing has changed within the city with the exception of this standard being issued, and now you've got an additional liability to report on the balance sheet. You know, just in kind of rough estimates, as we were talking recently, I don't think it's probably going to be enough to swing your fund balance negative. It may, you know, on that chart where we had the green bar, it may decrease some of those, but hopefully not swing the city into the red by any means. So that's all I had for our presentation for the year.
Yeah, it is a number on our piece of paper, but it's also something that we have to watch over time. I mean, in one sense, you know, this is a state issue because the state law directs these things, but we need to keep our eye on these things.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, there's not much the city can do about it. I mean, PERS sets the rates that you pay them in order to maintain this liability, so there's not really anything from your perspective that can be done about it.
Okay. Public comment? Board? Anybody want to weigh in on CAFR? Okay. Do it.
Ready?
Yeah, ready.
I move to accept the Carson City Comprehensive Annual Financial Report for the fiscal year ended June 30, 2014.
Second.
Motion and a second. On the motion, discussion? Discussion? I'd just like to say, you know, I think that, you know, last year we got an award. Looks like we may be getting an award this year as well. And I think that bespeaks well of you, Nick, and your staff, and I know you got staff there. And it's particularly pleasing, you know, that we are now, I know we have some things to continue on with the government reporting on the federal side of stuff, but we don't have to worry about that. We got an unmodified opinion on that. We got an unmodified opinion on our general fund. Those are good things. So I want to thank you, Dan, and now it's Furry, but I think what I'm really trying to say is, you know, thanks to Nick and your finance department for keeping an eye on all this. We wouldn't be getting these clean reports. And this to me, I mean, I see a lot of these, but I don't know. I'm not a John. I'm not a CPA. This looks like a real clean report to me. I mean, there's nothing material that's there except, you know, two minor issues on the cemetery and the ambulance fund. So, okay, out of a lot of money. All right. Anything else?
I have a question.
Question.
Well, first off, I want to wish you success in your new endeavor, your new firm. Hopefully it doesn't change anything. Is there anything we need to do to make our financial department, our internal control, that sort of thing better? Any studies, any people we need to hire? If you were sitting here, what would you recommend?
I'll say from my perspective, I think the audit definitely went very, very well. I know the internal audit function is starting a project or has begun a project on internal controls, just an assessment of the internal controls of the city, which is always a good thing. But definitely from the auditor's perspective, we had no real big issues, which is always a good thing. So I think the city's doing a great job. I'd reiterate Mayor Crowell's comment on the finance department. Great to work with. You got 3 CPAs on staff, which is always a benefit. So, yeah, I think as long as we don't change anything too significantly, you guys will continue to do just fine.
Under the rules that you have to operate under now, can you offer us any assistance if we had to revise the department or to replace people or that sort of thing? Or do you have to stay far away from us?
We certainly could. We would definitely have to be careful just to not impair our independence. But there's certain things that we could help you out with without making management decisions or recommendations. We've definitely done agreed upon procedures engagements in the past when you had specific issues that you needed us to look at. So depending on what it is, we could certainly discuss it. I'd hope to be able to help you guys out as long as the independence issue doesn't come up.
Okay. All right. On the motion, All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried unanimous. Thank you very much. On
Thank
the
you.
next motion, John, you want to make one on the corrective action?
Okay.
Go.
Computer moving here. Take some. I still move to adopt the Carson City Plan of corrective action for the fiscal year 2013-2014 statutory violations included in the annual audit.
Motion second. Public want to weigh in on the corrective action one? Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried unanimous. Okay. Thank you very much, folks. Now we'll take up non-action items because we're going to do this, then we'll lunch break until 2 o'clock. Anything anybody wants to pick up? Jim, go.
The appointment I made to the Oversight Committee for the Sewer and Water turned in a letter saying he'd like to resign from the board, so I'll be making that appointment sometime next year. And I'm just wondering, I know Al Kramer turned in his notice that he's going to be resigning. Is that something, a position that we could open up for? I know we probably need an agenda item, but is something we should look at to look for his replacement and do a search for it, or is it by appointment only?
The statute says that the board will appoint, and I think that the next thing we do is we know Al's going to be submitting his resignation. The next question is, and I've kind of asked the city manager to look at the process of how we do this, but it will be an appointment from us. It'll be an open process. And frankly, I've told, from my perspective, I asked him, I said, take a look at what Reno did when they were appointing a replacement to Sheevy's position. To see what that process was so that we can go, not reinvent the wheel, but that's what the idea would be. Okay?
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Yeah.
I would like to direct the city manager to take a look at Washoe County's ordinance for banning puppy mills. This is an issue that has come before us before, and well, we haven't yet. And we were waiting for the Humane Society to get on board and a lot of other issues. So I think it's probably time that we take a look at this.
I agree. I think it's a good idea. We have a copy of their existing ordinance. The Humane Society is going to work with us on this as we craft our own.
On that same,
Go, Jim. Sorry.
On that same issue, the Oversight Committee, there was supposed to be an Oversight Committee for the Humane Society, was in our minutes of the meeting here, which was discussed, but that still has not come to fruition. There's no indication that's even in progress, and I think that's something that the Oversight Committee should look at, not the city manager, just my opinion.
Okay.
I mean, of what Karen asked for.
Understood. I think that, at the end of the day, the Oversight Committee can do whatever it wants to do, but I mean, at the end of the day, it's an ordinance, so, okay, all right, got it. Okay, anything else? Anything? Can we be adjourned until 2 o'clock? We're adjourned until 2 o'clock. In recess until 2 o'clock, excuse me. Anything, Nick? Did I miss you? We're in recess until 2 p.m.